So there are two types of people that will read Psalm 32 and abuse it or misunderstand it. One are the Christians who will read Psalm 32 where it says that blessed is the man whose sins are covered. And to them, that will mean that, look, my sins are covered. I don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't usually hear them quote this place. They typically use, places in the so-called New Testament. That's what they usually use. Part of the reason why they don't really use Psalm 32 is because they don't know about it. They don't know about it. They don't travel around the Bible. They don't go around the Bible. So that's why they don't use it that often. But if they do see Psalm 32, they will use it to show you that this clearly shows that their sins are covered and they don't have to use it. They don't have to keep the law anymore. So that's one group of people that will badly abuse Psalm 32. And then you have the other group, which is those that don't believe in the New Testament and don't believe in Christ, and don't believe in, that believes only, they don't believe in Christ, and they don't believe. So they will also say, like when you look at Psalm 32 verse 5, they will say, look, they will say something like, you see, in Psalm 32 verse 5, it says that if I, confess my sin, that, so it's, but for us, we have to look at it differently. We have to look at it to have a better understanding of what Psalm 32 is talking about, because this is something that is very much applicable to us when you're talking about sin. Yeah, the Most High God does forgive sin, but He forgives sin. There's a reason. There's a system put in place. He does forgive sin. He forgave David, that same man that wrote Psalm 32. Yah forgave him when he killed a man, or first of all stole his wife, impregnated her, and then killed the man. Did Yah forgive him? Yeah, sure. Yah forgave him, but Yah still punished him. So Yah forgave him, but that punishment that he got was an everlasting punishment. An everlasting punishment. And not only him will go through he went through it, and he witnessed something that no man will ever want to witness, something like that. David witnessed that. Watching your son have sex with your wives, not just in secret. This isn't like it happened and there was a rumor. It wasn't in secret. It was done in public. Exactly what the Most High said that He will do in 2 Samuel chapter 12. Exactly what He said He would do. He told David, you did this in secret. You saw her. You lusted after her. You took her. You had sex with her, and you killed her husband. All these things you did in secret, I will punish you openly. So it wasn't, eventually David's son, did exactly what Yah said that David will go through. And I tell you, that is one of the worst things that anybody will go through: the humiliation, the anger, and still realizing that you can't do anything, because even that he was running from his son, this same son that did this to him. He was running because that son wants to kill him. So you see how the sword, David had to go through all this. But when Nathan confronted him from Yah, he asked for forgiveness. And Nathan said, Yah have forgiven you. But still, you still have to go through the punishment. So it's very important for us to understand forgiveness and not to understand it from a Christian perspective, because if we understand forgiveness, then we will then understand it according to the Torah. from a Hebrew perspective. Once we understand it, it will be very, very useful for us. Very useful as we live in this current world and we had to interact with people and do things. It's very important to understand it, because once you develop a very strong relationship with the Most High God, He considers you as His child. The Most High will now consider you as His son or His daughter. Now, for an average person, they may be saying, okay, why am I still going through this trouble? Why am I still going through this? Why am I still financial problems, sickness? If God really considered me to be His child? Well, the thing is that there is a procedure. There's procedure that is in place right now. We are currently not physically interacting with the Most High, because Yah is a spirit. Yah is a spirit, and those that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. John 4:24. So Yah is just, we are like they were in the wilderness. That's exactly the situation that we're in right now. Like they were in the wilderness. That's what we're living in right now. So just because you're not hearing a physical voice of the Most High doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. And if you think so, then you are thinking like those that lived in the days of Noah. Because from the time that Yah spoke to Noah, at some point, nobody was hearing anything from Yah anymore. So for those who was born after 20 years, born after 30 years, if you come around and you're talking about some God, they have no idea what you're talking about. And that's exactly what we're living in right now. So when Yah said that, when He says in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 17 and 18, come out from among them and be ye separate. Touch nothing unclean, and I will receive you to myself. I will be a father to you, and you will be sons and daughters to me. That is true. That is true. So there's a process that we're going through right now, by which you also see this in Matthew chapter 13. Matthew chapter 13. You don't have to actually go read these places now. You can just write them down so that you can relax later on and go through them. All these Bible verses. These are places you can read to understand what's going on. The reason why we're in the condition that we're in right now. And the reason why that Yah is not physically speaking to us. Yeah, He will speak. But when He begins to speak, you better be on the right group when Yah begins to speak, because at that point it will be too late. At that point there will no longer be a chance for forgiveness. So this is the time for us to make sure that we are part of the right group right now. This is the time. Now that Yah is quiet, I'm just watching to see what the world, the choice that we're going to make. And that's what you see in Matthew chapter 13. Matthew 13 from verse 24. You will read about the parable of the tares and the wheat. And then from verse 36, Matthew 13 from 24, you read about that parable. And then from verse 36, Yeshua explains that parable. That's exactly what we're living in right now. So we have to decide on whose side do we want to be. Or do we want to be the wheat or the tares? Same thing with Matthew 25. With the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25. We have to also decide, this is a choice. You see, there's always a period of time, like when you read that Matthew 13, you see that the farmer, what happened? The farmer came and planted some crops, right? He planted some crops, and the enemy came and planted a bad crop next to the good ones. And then the servants of the master, the servants of the farmer, came to the farmer and said, look, the enemy just planted something bad next to the good crops. Do you want us to go remove the bad ones? He said, no, just leave them to grow together. When the time comes, during the harvest, you will go and then take the bad ones and burn them up, and then gather the good ones and bring them to me. That's what we're living in right now. This is that period of time that Yah is keeping quiet. And for a lot of foolish people, they will assume that Bible is, some old book and there's no God and all that. That's what we're living in right now. You will also see the same. This is a waiting period. But within this waiting period, Yah is testing us. The Most High is testing us to see. Same thing you see in with Matthew 25, with the parable of the ten virgins. 5 was foolish, 5 was wise. But you see that same waiting period where they were being tested. The 5 that was wise realized what was happening, and they were not goofing around. They were not focusing on things that doesn't matter. They were waiting and they were focused. But you see the other 5, they quickly got distracted and began to do whatever, and they're not paying attention. And what happened at some point, that testing period will come to a close. That's what's happening right now. That's what happened to the Israelites in the wilderness. But like the Israelites in the wilderness, at some point, the Most High had to test them, like you see in Deuteronomy chapter 8 and Deuteronomy chapter 9. If you read Deuteronomy chapter 8 and chapter 9, it even tells you, at some point, Yah made them to go hungry. Yah made them to lack food because he wanted to see how they will react. And it's more of like he wanted them to see how they will react. He knows how they will react. How do we know that he knows? Well, if you read Jubilees chapter 1, the very first chapter, you see Yah telling Moses everything that the Israelites would do, even before they did it. What you see around you today, the fact that most Hebrews have gone after the Gentiles in every way. Yah talked about how the Hebrews are going to abandon the Sabbath day, abandon the holy days, and will go after the Gentiles. That's exactly what's happening today. So, but whether you're talking about the good crop in Matthew 13, the wise virgins in Matthew 25, the other group of people in Malachi chapter 3 from verse 14, Caleb and Joshua in the wilderness, whether we have to make sure that we are in the right side of this, because you're talking about Noah, his family, and the rest of the world. We have to, this is the beautiful thing and the good thing right now is that we have this wonderful opportunity right now to get things together, to get our acts together. Because once he sends out his angel to gather his people, there will no longer be an opportunity. There will no longer be an opportunity. So having this understanding and the fact that we are living in this world and we have to interact with the people in the world and we have to basically go on this journey every day, it's important for us to understand forgiveness from God's perspective, from the perspective of our judge, from the perspective of our Father, our Master. Because if we understand forgiveness from his perspective, then we will be better off, and be careful as we go along. So once you begin to keep the law, like as I said, you fall into a particular category of people, and there's an elite group. Like as I said, you also see this in the book of Psalm that we read earlier. There's an elite group of people that Yah pays special attention to. And it's such a good thing to, once you begin to keep Yah's law with all your heart and with all your soul, and you truly, truly love Yah's law and you want to do it, and you don't mind being called crazy, you don't mind any of that, once you do this, you will fall into a particular category of people. That group of people, Moses or Moshe was in that group. Caleb, not Moses was in that group, that group of people. David, not Caleb. David, yeah, Caleb and Joshua was also in that group. David was in that group. David was in that group. What's his name? Judas was in that group. Now, David, Moses, Judas, what do they have in common? These are men that did stuff. They did things that you may be aware of. There's a, so there's a particular group, an elite group of people that, yeah, it's such a beautiful thing to be added into that group. And Yah talked about those groups in Malachi chapter 3 from verse 14. Those that fear him and keep his word. It's good to join that group, but it's also, I'm not going to say dangerous to be in that group, because when you are in that group, once you join that elite group of people, there was that group, and that group is still available till today and will still be in the future. Joining it is very simple. All you need to do is truly start keeping the law with all your heart and with all your soul. And when you actually begin to keep the law and you begin to grow, the more you grow spiritually and into keeping the law, the closer you get to the Most High God, the closer you get to Him. And like as I said, you will eventually get to the point by which you can pray for someone who is sick, and Yah can, because of you, answer that prayer. You begin to get to a level like Paul. When Paul was killing people, he wasn't in that group. If he prays, Yah will never answer his prayer. But eventually, Paul the apostle got to a point that people will take his handkerchief, what he used to wipe his face, wipe out sweat. People will take it and touch it and be healed. So what happened? He went from being a murderer to being to a point that he can, so that's the level that we should strive to get to. That means you've come close to Yah. That means that thing that was said in Proverbs 28 verse 9 does no longer apply to you. He, of course, and she also, he that hears that turns their ear from hearing the law, even their prayer will be an abomination. So that no longer applies to you at that point. Now, does it mean that Yah will do everything that you want? No. Because at the end of the day, if we're really smart, we should pray and say, let His will be done. Yes, this is what I want. Yes, this is what I desire. But let His will be done. Because everything happens for a reason. Yah does everything for a reason. So if there's a reason why He wants something to happen, and I want something else, and then I don't get that thing, that doesn't mean that Yah hates me. That doesn't mean that He doesn't hear my prayer. It just simply means that it's not His will. And if I'm truly being an obedient, good, humble child, then I wouldn't have any problem with what my Father wants. I mean, I would rather have the other thing, but if that's not Dad's will, then okay, fine. Because I know that He knows the best. So that, because you're in that group doesn't mean that, for example, David, right? David was praying for the child to live, for the child not to die, the child that was born out of, what he did. That was really what David was asking for. He wasn't asking for his sins to be forgiven. Like, he asked for that. He was told that his sins that he's been forgiven. But then Yah lays out the punishment that he has to go through. But David refused to eat. David was on the ground. David was pleading with Yah. Pleading with Yah. to allow that child not to die. That was the child that came before Solomon. So he was pleading for that child not to die, but the child still died. The child fell sick and died some days after. But it was David's desire for that child to live. But the child did not live because it wasn't Yah's will. So when it comes to prayer, we have to understand that. But also forgiveness as special children of Yah. Forgiveness. It's important to understand it because I understand it from Yah's perspective. Because if you just look at Psalm 32 and you just take it and run like a Christian or like an anti-Christ person, then that's dangerous. So Yah tells us, in order to understand Psalm 32, you have to understand Ezekiel chapter 18 and chapter 33. And you see the standard to which Yah forgives sin. So let's go to Ezekiel chapter 18. Ezekiel chapter 18, Yah himself will tell us to on the condition that he's going to forgive sin. So Ezekiel chapter 18 from verse 1. Ezekiel 18 from verse 1. It says, Ezekiel 18 from verse 1. The word of Yah came to me again, saying, what do you mean when you use this proverb concerning the land of Israel, saying, the fathers have eaten Saul's grapes, and the children's teeth set on edge. So it was a proverb that people use. The fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. So basically that the fathers did something and the children are being punished. So Yah is against this proverb. He's against this proverb. And in verse 3, Ezekiel chapter 18 from verse 3, he goes on to explain why he's against these proverbs and then what forgiveness means and how he judges people. Ezekiel chapter 18 from verse 3, as I live, says Yah Elohim, you shall no longer use this proverb in Israel. Verse 4, behold, verse 4, behold, all souls are mine. The soul of the Father as well as the soul of the Son is mine. Please, it's very important to pay attention to the word soul. Soul. He starts out talking about soul. What Yah is going to be speaking here all the way is he's talking about soul. The soul, all souls are his. And then he's going to talk about the souls that will die and the souls that will live. There's a difference between a soul and a regular life. Like right now I'm alive, but if I die, my soul is not dead. Just because I died doesn't mean my soul is dead. Because, so that is those who don't believe this are those who are like atheists, those who believe in evolution. In evolution that believes that we came out of nothing and we're going back to nothing. But we do have souls. We do have souls. And but Yah is going to be talking mainly about souls. So he says in verse 4, behold, all souls are mine. The soul of the Father as well as the soul of the Son is mine. The soul whose sins shall die. The soul whose sins shall die. So speaking of verse 4, behold, all souls are mine. The soul of the Father as well as the soul of the Son. Now, look at, for example, when you talk about abortion, people talk about the right to choose. The right to choose. People will tell you, those that do claim to believe in God, that also supports abortion, some may tell you that, well, it's not their choice to make. It's the woman's choice. Right to choose. It's a choice. So if they want to do an abortion, it's up to them. No, at no point should you ever support abortion. If you support abortion, then you are supporting someone. Even the woman that is carrying the baby, she is not the maker of that baby. She is not. She's just a vessel. She's a vessel who is being used to create the baby. But she doesn't have the right to kill the baby. Just because she's carrying the baby doesn't give her the right to kill the baby. It doesn't work like that. Because the only time a woman will have the right to do that is if she can snap her finger and become pregnant. If she can decide, I want to be pregnant, and she'll just snap her finger and she's pregnant. But if she has to go through the process that Yah have put in place, then she's really not really in control, because she's just following the protocol that has been put in place that you have to go through to become pregnant. So that means that a seed has to come into you, and then you conceive, and then you become pregnant. So when that happens, you can't claim that you are the author of the baby that you have in your stomach, or that you have the right over the life of the baby you have in your stomach. But that's what you see the Gentiles. That's what abortion is based on, the right to choose. Again, because they are mostly atheists. They don't know the Most High. They don't know Yah, and they don't want to know Yah. They don't want to do the will of Yah. That's why they think like that. So Yah says here, all souls are His. Nobody has a right to kill. Not even yourself. You can't even kill yourself. You can't even commit suicide. You cannot even kill yourself. If you kill yourself, then that's a sin. If you take your own life, you are committing sin. So you may take your own life to avoid whatever it is that you're trying to avoid right now, but you have a greater problem in the future. Why take that chance? Only a fool would take a chance like that. You see, I am in this world right now. I've seen this world. I've seen what it's like. I've seen it and I don't like it. Well, if I have a choice to take a bet, whether there's an afterlife, whether there's something, after this, or whether there's not, I would take that there's something after this. Because you know what? If you assume that there is not, and then you end up being wrong, there will not be an opportunity to make things right. So only fools think that this is it, this life, this is it, that's it, we're done. You better enjoy your life. That's what people say. You better enjoy your life. You only have one life. Yeah, you better enjoy it righteously. When people say that, they mean, oh, you just do whatever you want. That's what people usually mean when they mean like enjoy your life. That's usually what they mean. So you better enjoy it because you only have one life. I agree, you have one life, but it has to be enjoyed righteously. Righteously, meaning according to the law. So even committing suicide is sin. So for whatever reason why people commit suicide, anyone that takes their life, you don't have the right to take your life. You don't have the right to take someone else's life. You don't have the right to do that. Everything we do has to be done according to the law. Now, there are circumstances where Yah told us that we have to take people's life. There are circumstances that is supposed to happen. And I tell you, I have seen things with my eyes. I've seen things that, that I've seen horrible things. I've seen things that, and I'm sure if you are put into certain situations, you will also not mind taking people's life. If you're put into a certain situation, because there are wicked people out there in the world, there are evil people in the world, So so there are circumstances where Yah tells us to take life. So in that circumstances, then we have to do it according to the way He told us to do it. Other than that, then you're simply committing sin, because we don't have the right to take our own lives or to take the life of anybody. We don't have the right to do that. It's like saying, oh, I can kill my child because I gave birth to my child. No, you can't do that. All souls are Yah's, like He said in Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 4. Behold, all souls are mine. The soul of the Father as well as the soul of the Son is mine. The soul who sins shall die. It's also important to understand 1 John 3:4. Sin there is lawlessness. So Yah is really saying that the soul that break the law shall die. That's what it's saying. And they use the word sin and iniquity. What it actually means is lawlessness. Lawlessness. Yah is saying that anyone that breaks His law will die. That's what the Most High is saying. Any soul that breaks his law will die. Meaning that soul will not go past the judgment day and make it into the kingdom. So as we read all the way down, he will be more specific and letting us know what we need to do in order to live. So it says in verse 5, but if a man who is just and does what is lawful, here we go, lawful and right. So verse 4 says, behold, all souls are mine. The soul of the Father as well as the soul of the Son is mine. The soul who sins shall die. Verse 5, but if a man is just and does what is lawful. So this is about the law. So you see, it says at the end of verse 4, the soul who sins shall die. Verse 5, but if a man is just and does what is lawful. So the opposite of sin is lawful. The opposite of lawlessness is lawfulness, lawful. So it says, but if a man is just, what is just? Being just, being righteous. Like Paul said that in Romans 2:13, that not the hearers of the law are just, but the doers of the law will be justified. Romans 2:13, not the hearers of the law are just. Simply hearing the law doesn't make us just, but the doers of the law will be justified. So Yah says in verse 5, Ezekiel chapter 18 verse 5, but if a man is just and does what is lawful and right, if he has not eaten on the mountains, nor lifted up his eyes to the idols of the house of Israel, nor defile his neighbor's wife. Okay, so it starts out telling you, because the Israelite had, all these idols that they have, at some point they begin killing their children to sacrifice their children. So Yah is saying, if a man has not done this, first thing first, if a man is keeping the law, and verse 6, if he has not eaten on the mountains, because they do go there. Okay, so this is Christmas. When people invite you for Christmas, for Easter, Thanksgiving, please don't go. Please do not go. There was a relative that used to invite me for July 4th or Thanksgiving, and I used to go, but I stopped, and she also stopped inviting me. So, because what are they doing on that day? They say it's Thanksgiving and they sit together and they eat turkey on that day. Who are they thanking? They just say Thanksgiving. This is paganism. It's pagan. So when we do go sit with them on that day that this is a day that they chose, it's a pagan day, we cannot participate. So you clearly see saying here in Ezekiel chapter 18, and he's telling you the reason why a man will be saved. It's giving you example of how, it starts out in verse 5, Ezekiel chapter 18 from verse 5. But if a man is just and does what is lawful and right. And then it goes on from verse 6, Ezekiel chapter 18 verse 6. If he has not eaten on the mountains, what does that mean? Because the Israelites will go on the mountains. They go make their sacrifices. After sacrificing, they also take foods and drinks, and they will sit and eat there. So, but there's a reason why they are making that celebration on that day, because of their idols that they worship. So after they do their thing, their priests will do their thing, and then they will eat and drink. We can't go sit and join them do that. It's such an amazing, amazing, amazing thing. I wish you can really see this. It's so interesting that many of the things, or pretty much everything you read that has happened in the past, is happening right in our face today. Just like they had all these pagan gods in the past, we're seeing that. But I think because we are living within it, and we've participated in doing many of these things, to us, it seems like, oh, it's not a big deal. No, it is a big deal. It is a big deal. Let me give you an example. Think of, for those of you that know the Statue of Liberty, the Statue of Liberty in Staten Island. If you know, this is a statue that represents America. That woman that has like a torch, wears a rope, holding like a lamp or a torch, holding it up. It's a very famous statue that represents America. Anywhere you see that, you know that this is a representative of America. That woman represents America. It's in an island, in Staten Island in New York. An image like that. Let me give you an example. Let me just use something that famous and something that very widely accepted. If you speak against that image right now, if you go tore that image down, they'll probably put you in prison for the rest of your life. And people will say that you're crazy for bringing down the image. Okay, so what do you think, say for example, Paul the Apostle would think of an image like that? Imagine wherever you live right now. Imagine somebody from 2,000 years ago coming into the city where you live and beginning to look at things. Imagine the look in their face. Like when they look at the way people dress, the way people talk, and when they come across Christian churches and see those, when they see those images of Christ, images of Mary, they will consider those things to be abomination. They will consider them to be an abomination. When they see dead bodies being brought into a so-called worship center, these things will be an abomination to them. When they see people pretty much walking around naked, if someone comes back from 2,000 years ago, they will probably have a heart attack. They will probably collapse within five minutes by the things that they will see. Looking at men walking around unshaven, they will be shocked to see men, because back then even pagans have their beards. It's a shameful thing. It was a shameful thing for men to walk around with beards that are without a beard. 2 Kings chapter 10. So 2 Kings chapter 10 verse 1 to 5. So for someone to come, and this I'm saying this because you have to see things from the perspective of someone that comes from 2,000 years ago. You really have to. You cannot ignore and think like the way people are thinking, oh, those things, those are old days. Those are things that was done in the past. You have to see it from the perspective. Imagine someone coming from 2,000 years ago into this world right now. They will be so shocked that they'll probably collapse, because they're going to see men walking around without their beards, women walking around pretty much no covering, and they will be like, what is this? You know, they will be shocked with the images that they will see around, because images was not something, it was something that pagans only have. So, and they will tell you, this is paganism. This is, anybody that has this image is practicing paganism. So these things are very important for, we need to begin to see it from that perspective. The only problem is that if you do try to see things from that perspective, people will oppose you. People will disagree with you, but it's okay. That's fine. That's okay if they do. The fact that they disagree with you and oppose you means that you're right. That's really what it is, you know. Because if someone who is not keeping the law have problem on what you're saying about the law, their problem is not valid, because they're not disagreeing with you from a biblical perspective. They're disagreeing with you from a worldly perspective. So, as you can see here, Yah is against Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 6. The Most High is against anyone who goes and sits down and eats with people who are celebrating a pagan day or a pagan worship. We can't participate in that. Ezekiel chapter 18 clearly shows you that we cannot go and sit with them and eat with them on their day and on the things that they're doing for their idols. That cannot happen. I saw a video where Muslims was burning down a Roman Catholic church or a church. I saw that. I have no problem with that video. I think they were doing the right thing. But just by saying that, most people would think, what? That's crazy. Why would you think that? Yeah, they're doing the right thing, because they were setting that church on fire and they were burning. First of all, they went into the church and they began to burn down the images. They were breaking those pillars, breaking those images of so-called Christ and Mary. They were breaking the whole thing, and then eventually I think they ended up setting the church on fire. I saw that video. I liked it, because we shouldn't have those images. But most people would think that, oh no, that's crazy. You're supporting terrorism. That's not, yeah, even if you disagree with them, you shouldn't destroy their images. Well, Yah told us to do that. And that's why the so-called Muslims are doing it, you know. And if you want to see where, you should read Deuteronomy chapter 13. Deuteronomy chapter 13, you can see the things that Yah told us to do there. It's part of them is, you know, destroying stuff, you know, like that. So Christmas, Easter, New Year, all these pagan holidays, which wherever you live, I know we're in different places, wherever you live, whatever they celebrate, please do not participate. Do not participate. You can respectfully decline to, you know, to go. And you know, we can participate in those things, and you can clearly see that this is one of the things that Yah have included as part of forgiveness. The thing, if any man that do not participate in these things, this is how you obtain forgiveness. Okay, so verse 6, if he has not eaten on the mountains, nor lifted up his eyes to the idols of the house of Israel, nor defile his neighbor's wife. That's mainly for men, for us men, defiling our neighbor's wife. This is a very big one, and we have to make sure that we're not defiling our neighbor's wife. This is actually a little bit deeper than it reads here, because defiling your neighbor's wife, it doesn't only mean like David did. What David did was a good example of a man defiling his neighbor's wife. What David did was a perfect example of that. But the thing is that if we're not going to go into it right now because it's a little bit deeper, but why did Yah use the word defile? He used the word in Ezekiel chapter 18 verse 6. Ezekiel 18 verse 6. if he has not eaten on the mountains, nor lifted up his eyes to the idols of Israel, or the house of Israel, nor defile his neighbor's wife. Because according to Deuteronomy chapter 24, let's say Moses has a wife. Okay, I'm not going to use Moses. Let me use somebody less than Moses. Let's say Caleb. If I go and have sex with Caleb's wife, I have defiled her. It means that she's defiled. If I have sex with her, she's defiled, and Caleb can no longer have sex with her. Caleb can no longer do that. So if this is terrible. It's a terrible sin. If you see it from the Most High's perspective, and you can clearly see what I'm talking about in Deuteronomy chapter 24. Deuteronomy chapter 24 from verse 1 to 4. Deuteronomy chapter 24 from verse 1 to 4, you can clearly see that. So for a man to go and have sex with another man's wife, that is an abomination. You see, I saw a video of a Gentile that clearly saw his wife, quote unquote, having an affair with another man, and eventually they still got together and they continue to live together. That cannot happen according to Yah. Once a woman has sex with another, if my wife has sex or another man has sex with my wife, I can no longer take her back. Like, I can no longer have sex with her. It's done because she's defiled. Again, the deepest I'm going to go into that right now is to refer you to Deuteronomy chapter 24 from verse 1 to 4. But at a later time, we can study that and go deeper into it. So it's a very big sin because you've literally just like torn apart family. You've destroyed a family if you do that, because that man unless if that man doesn't fear Yah. If that man fears Yah, he can no longer have sex with his wife. And that's the reason why there's a death sentence to this. Any man that does this will be put to death, or any man and woman that does it will be put to death. So that's why you have a death sentence for adultery. So it says, nor defile his neighbor's wife, nor approach a woman during her impurity. That also should not be happening. Approaching a woman during her period, because she's unclean. She is heavily unclean. That approaching her mean sex. That's what it means. Approaching her doesn't mean to just approach her physically. Because if you have a wife and you live in the same house and she's in her period, sometimes you may end up also being unclean, but you will be unclean until evening. And it's not sin for you to be unclean through your wife during her period. It's not a sin. It becomes a sin if you become unclean and you don't do what you're supposed to do that evening, in terms of washing yourself in the evening. Then it becomes a sin. So, but just living in the same house doesn't make you, there's nothing wrong with that. So when Yah says, no, approach a woman during her impurity, it's talking about sex, meaning to have sex with her during her impurity. That is something, but primarily other women also. That is like approaching someone else's wife. That shouldn't happen at all. But even happening during her period is even worse. Verse 7. And we are reading the things that if a man does these things, he will live. His soul will be saved. His soul will not be destroyed. Yah himself is giving you list that if a man does these things, he will make it into the kingdom. his soul will be saved. So that's the list that we're reading here. So it says in verse 7, Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 7, if he has not oppressed anyone, but has restored to the debtor his pledge, has robbed no one by violence, but has given his bread to the hungry, and has covered the naked with clothing, if he has not exacted usury, nor taken any increase, but has withdrawn his hand from iniquity, meaning lawlessness. Again, iniquity means lawlessness, and has executed true judgment between man and man. Verse 9, if he has walked in my statutes and kept my judgment faithfully, he is just, he shall surely live, says Yah. So you see the standard of a just man or a just woman. So this is how anyone that does any of this or that doesn't do any of this, the one that we shouldn't do, that person will surely live. So if you come up to verse 7, it says, if he has not oppressed anyone. We have to be careful not to do this. It's so easy to oppress people without even realizing it. We have to be very careful. That's why we have to be careful when we deal with people. It's easy. A man, this doesn't apply only to men. A woman can also do this. A woman can oppress a woman. A woman can oppress a child. Oppressing people really, we have to be very careful not to do this, because sometimes you may actually be oppressing someone and you will have a very good reason in your mind as to why you're doing it. So we have to walk carefully to not oppress people and having a reason for doing it. Let's say, for example, a good example is when the Israelite was traveling from Egypt. They came up to a particular land. They came up to a land where all they wanted was just to pass through. So because there were so many of them, they had to send some people to go beg the people of that land to please allow them to go through their land, just to pass through. If it's like maybe 5 people, you can just walk by and go by. But when you have a large convoy of people, when you have a large group of people that are going to go by, trust me, the whole town will notice that people are going by. And if they do go by your town, they're going to go through crops and they're going to go through, you will definitely see the footprint for sure. So in order to be respectful, the Israelites sent some people to go beg them to please allow them to pass through. And that nation refused. They refused to let them go through. They refused to do that. And the Israelite was like, if we need water in your town, we'll pay. We will pay, we'll buy food, we'll pay for water, we'll pay for anything that we take from your town, we'll pay you money. Because they were using silver as money. We'll pay you for anything that we do take. The people still said, no, we're not letting you pass by. Now, that's the kind of thing that makes the Most High angry, because these people are simply just begging you to let them pass through, just to go by your town. And they offered that they will pay for anything that they take, anything that anybody needs in your town, they will pay you for that. They still said no. Now, that is oppression there. Those are the kind of things that makes Yah angry. And this is also, and you can see how Yah treats situations like this in Deuteronomy chapter 23. Deuteronomy chapter 23, look at what Yah says. Look at what he says. So we have to be careful. Now, if you go, reason why I give you that example is that if you ask these people why they did not let the Israelites to go by, they will tell you that because they don't want this, or because they don't want that, or because of this. Because they will have a good reason for doing this. So we have to be careful. Even when we have reasons, we have to look at the situation carefully so that we don't end up oppressing somebody or oppressing people without even knowing it. Sometimes you can do that without even realizing it, and that will rekindle or kindle Yah's anger against you, and you won't even know that Yah is not happy with you. So Deuteronomy chapter 23, you will see what Yah says here in Deuteronomy chapter 23 from verse 3. Deuteronomy chapter 23 from verse 3. Deuteronomy 23 from verse 3. An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter into the assembly of Yah, even to the 10th generation. None of his descendants shall enter the assembly of Yah forever, because they did not meet you with bread and water on the road when you came out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam, the son of Beor, from Bethor of Mesopotamia, to curse you. Nevertheless, Yah, your Elohim, will not listen to Balaam, but Yah, your Elohim, turned the curse into a blessing for you, because Yah, your Elohim, loves you. Verse 6, look at verse 6. This is coming from God. This is coming from Yah. Look at that verse 6. You shall not seek their peace, nor prosperity, all your days, forever. Forever. You shall not seek their peace, nor their prosperity, all your days, forever. Now, what was their sin? What do they do wrong? It says in verse 4, because they did not meet you with bread and water on the road when you came out of Egypt. Because they hired, not only did they do that, but they also hired Balaam to curse the Israelites. So, and then of course we have the scripture in verse 7. You shall not abhor an Edomite, for he is your brother. You shall not abhor an Egyptian, because you were an alien in his land, or a slave in his land. So, and then in verse 8, the children of the third generation born to them may enter the assembly of Yah. So, we have to be very careful to not oppress people. The reason why this is so important is that oftentimes people have a legitimate reason for doing this. People have a legitimate reason, and we have to be careful not to let our anger and emotion get control of us. And sometimes when someone does something to you, I know it's difficult to forgive, and it's difficult, but find a way. It doesn't mean that you forget. It doesn't mean that you become a fool. It doesn't mean that you forget what they did. Like people would say, like sometimes, okay, for example, we're dealing with forgiveness right now. When someone does something really, really bad, really, really terrible, let's say someone, or let me use my family as an example, something that actually happened to me. My little sister, my younger sister, was killed in a car accident. Now, on the day that she was buried, the man that killed her came to the funeral, and he was crying. He was crying the day that my little sister was buried. So he was forgiven. My family forgave him. There was nothing that was done to them. There was no legal action. He didn't go to prison. There was nothing. It was an accident. He killed my sister. He was forgiven. Now, let me ask you, do you think that my family will allow that man to ever come around me or my siblings with a car? They will never allow that to happen again. Yeah, you killed our daughter. We forgave you, but we will never allow you, to come around our children with a car ever again. Now, does it mean that they didn't forgive him? Of course, they forgave him. So if somebody kills your child with a car or with a gun, would you ever allow, if somebody is playing with a gun and the gun goes off and kills your child, you will never allow them to be around your children again with a gun. Does it mean that you didn't forgive them? So we have to also understand the meaning of forgiveness. Like when Yah forgave David in Second Kings chapter 12, when Yah forgave, Second Samuel. So when he forgave David, right? But he still punished David anyway. He punished David. So according to us, right now, to our understanding of forgiveness, we will be questioning the whole situation and asking, why did he still punish him if he forgave him? Because he asked for forgiveness, he was told you're forgiven, but he was still punished. See, we have to begin to see these things from Yah's perspective. So just because I forgave you doesn't mean that I'm going to forget what happened in the first place. I'm not going to, if I forgive you and I then make myself vulnerable or put myself in a situation where the whole thing will repeat itself again, then what's the point? Then I'm a fool. So we have to be, when we're dealing with people and people are dealing with us, we have to be careful not to oppress people. And when people do wrong, yes, it's good to forgive, but that doesn't mean you should become foolish and not and not keep in mind. Doesn't mean you should forget what happened. No, because you forgive doesn't mean that you should forget. Because if you do that, the same thing will repeat itself again. Now you will have a situation of fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. That's what you will have. So according to the world and people in the world today, forgiveness means that if you forgive them, you should forget everything and then put yourself right back in the same situation where what happened in the first place. That's the world's understanding of forgiveness as of today. We have to be careful not to do that. And what typically happens is when you do forgive, but you refuse to, like, let's say somebody has been stealing your money, right? You keep your money in your bedroom, right? You keep your money in your bedroom, and for a long time you've been keeping your money in somewhere like under your bed in your bedroom, right? I don't know where you keep your money, but I usually tie my money in a little bag. I usually put it in a little plastic bag. If I have to keep money at home, I will wrap it up with a plastic bag. So let's say you've been keeping your money like that, and somebody has been going in there and stealing a little bit of your money, and you didn't know. And then eventually, and your doors are usually open. Usually you leave your door open, right? You don't close your door. Actually, there's no key in your door. You have no key in your door. And then you realize that this person has been stealing your money. You realized it. You were very, very angry. They asked you for forgiveness. And they really apologized, and you took their forgiveness and you forgave them. And then you went and put keys on your door. You will be a fool not to put a key in your door. Just because you forgave them doesn't mean you should still leave your door open. You need to go buy some key, put a key in that door. Because you don't want what happened before to happen again. People will love to say, oh, the devil made me do it. The devil made me, it was the work of the devil. No, the devil he didn't make you do anything. He deceived you to do it, but he didn't make you to do it. So a wise person will forgive. But after you forgive, you need to go buy some key and put a key in that door. Now, according to the people's understanding of forgiveness today, we're looking at forgiveness from Yah's perspective. That's what we're doing right now. According to the world's understanding of forgiveness, if they've been stealing your money, I'm giving an example. If they've been stealing your money and you find out, and they plead and ask for forgiveness and you forgave them, and then you go to the store and buy a key and put in your door, they will accuse you of not forgiving them. They will not believe that you've forgiven them, because to them, if you have forgiven them, then you should just let everything that happened just pass by. You shouldn't put key in the door. You putting key in the door means that you haven't forgiven them. No, that's not true. You forgave them, but you have to now take measures not to let what happened before happen again. Because if you don't take any measures, then you're nothing but it's foolishness to leave yourself in a vulnerable situation that will allow what happened to happen again. If you truly forgive that person, you should put things in place to make the things that happen not to happen again. That is true forgiveness. So that's between us and other people. When you deal with people, you have to be very careful. Yes, it's good to forgive, because if you don't forgive, oftentimes you will end up doing things that you may end up going too far, and it becomes oppression. It becomes oppression at that point, and we have to be careful not to oppress people. But at the same time, we have to also be smart to forgive, but make sure that you don't allow the things that happen to happen again. And if most likely that person will accuse you and will feel like you didn't really forgive them. They may actually become begin to be angry at you that you're taking this thing too far. After all, they've asked for forgiveness. Why are you still? No, I forgave you, but I'm going to take measures. I'm going to do things and take measures. So that's true forgiveness. Unfortunately, this is no longer practiced in the world today. The people expect you to roll over. People expect you to, when they harm you and they do something wrong to you, they expect you to forgive. And part of that forgiveness is that you forgive and forget. Forgive and forget everything that happened and pretend as if it doesn't happen. That's foolishness. You should never forget. You should forgive, but don't forget. Don't forget, keep the things that happen in mind. So in that way, you make sure that it doesn't happen again. Okay, so it says, verse 7 is talking about oppressing people. We have to make sure most oppression that happens deliberately. Like, taking something from someone because you can, and there's nobody that can fight for them. That is oppression. Like forcing someone to do something because and forcing someone to do something, and you are forcing them to do it, and really they have no choice, and they nobody can save them. They are at your mercy. That is oppression. Like slavery is oppression. All these things, these are oppression. So those are usually open oppression. They are usually open oppression. Typically when people oppress people, usually when someone oppresses someone else, they're doing it because they have power and they can do it. And people do these things openly, right? It's obvious, it's open, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the indirect oppression that we can easily inflict on people without even realizing. We have to be very, very careful not to do that. We have to be extremely careful, because it's easy to oppress people and not realize that you are actually oppressing them. We have to be very, very careful when we deal with people. And then the second one, it says under oppressing people in verse 7, Ezekiel chapter 18 verse 7. If he has not oppressed anyone, but has restored to the debtor his pledge. So those that you owe, this is part of repentance. If I say that I've repented, but I refuse to pay people that I owe, that's not repentance. That is not repentance. I used to be in the film industry, and there was a project that I wanted to do. I took loans from friends. These are friends of mine. I took loans from them in thousands and thousands of dollars. I took loans, but the business didn't really work out the way I planned. So I was stuck with thousands and thousands of dollars of debt that really the business didn't work out. But I have these loans that I have to pay back. Typically, when people do that, people may file for bankruptcy or whatever. And many of these people, in a normal circumstances, they would take me to court. But they didn't do that. They didn't take me to court because of these people was friends. They were friends of mine that I approached, and they wrote checks. With really, they didn't have to do that. Most people will not do that. So for the reason why say that you have to pay those that you owe, which is part of repentance, which leads to forgiveness. The reason is that, like in my case, when you approach a hardworking man or woman and explain to them, like I did, what I'm about to do, and they gave me their hard-earned money, and it doesn't matter whether it worked out or not. For me, things didn't really work out the way I planned, but it doesn't matter, because I can claim that, well, sorry, I can't pay you back because the business didn't work out. Now, that may fly with men, but that cannot fly with Yah. That is absolute nonsense. I have to figure out a way to pay them back, because these people gave me their hard-earned money. So it will be an evil thing for me not to pay them back. So that's why it says here, but has restored to the debtor his pledge, has robbed no one by violence. We most likely are not going to do this. The debt one we most likely will do. Robbing people by violence we most likely are not going to do, but we still need to know what it says. But has given his bread to the hungry. This is something that we have to constantly try to do as much as we can. I don't advise you to do that when you yourself are hungry. When you're hungry and you have family, you have to feed your children first. You cannot be feeding people's children when your children are hungry. You cannot be feeding other people when your own family is hungry. That is foolishness. You have to first of all make sure that your children are fed, and then you can get up and then look around for other people's children to feed them. So when you do have surplus, when you do have extra, it's always recommended to make sure that you help those who are in need, those people who are hungry out there. It's always good, even if it's whatever you can give, whatever you can give them. Nothing is too small. When you are homeless and you're hungry, you've gone for a day and a half or two with no food, nothing, even a drinking water, nothing is too small if you are in that situation. So we should always try to help those who are hungry and those who are in need as much as we can. So these are things that when you do these things, Yah is watching. That's why Yeshua told you that when he comes back, he is going to say to people, I was hungry, you fed me. I was in the prison, you visited me. I was naked, you clothed me. We should do as much as we can. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what I do and what I don't, but when you do see people who are naked, I see people who are naked all the time, but just that they are naked because they wanted to be naked, not because they lack clothing. But I've also seen people, that do, I don't want to, typically when you do stuff, you're not supposed to be saying it. When you do help people like that, you're not supposed to be saying it. But once in a while you run into people that are naked, especially during the cold. If you can give somebody a blanket, those people that are homeless, a blanket, a socks, you have no idea what you're doing, because you are sowing a big seed, for your salvation. Yah do recognize those things, because again, remember, Yah is testing us. The Most High is testing us, and he said that there will always be a poor among us. There will always be a poor among us. So when someone is cold, you give them a blanket, you're clothing them. These are things that we should try to do as much as we can, especially for tomorrow being a new moon day. Tomorrow being a new moon day, we're specifically we're told in Nehemiah chapter 8 to make sure that we give some food to those who are hungry. So tomorrow, if you can, give some food or whatever, even if it's bread, nothing is too small, nothing is too little. If you can give that to a homeless person tomorrow, being a new moon day, that will be wonderful. So it says in verse 8, if he has not exacted usury nor taking any increase. So usury, that's usually when you loan people money and you take interest. We're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to do that. Did you also notice that the Muslims don't do that? So I've always told you that the Muslims, the Arabs, are Hebrews because they came from Ishmaelite. They came from Ishmael. They are also Hebrews. So you see them practicing the laws in the scriptures. They don't take loan. They have banks where you go in and you get loan with no interest. They don't take loans. So it's not only covering themselves and having beard that they do. The Muslims also do not take usury when they give loans. So we're not supposed to do that. It says in verse 8, if he has not exacted usury, nor taken any increase, but has withdrawn his hand from iniquity, lawlessness, withdrawn his hand from practicing lawlessness, and executed true judgment between a man and a man. When two people are fighting or they have problem, we have to judge righteously. We cannot take sides. And oftentimes people will become mad at you. People will become angry at you because there are some circumstances where people will be fighting, and because they are so close to you, they automatically assume that you will take their side. They automatically assume that you will take their side. My mother, told me of how, somebody close to her, was kind of having a fight or having problems with people, and that person for sure assumed that she will automatically take his side. Automatically. That's what he was thinking. So when she doesn't do that, then that person gets angry. So this will happen often, when you deal with people. They assume that because you are their family member or you are their friend, that you will take their side when they are wrong. No, I will not take your side when you're wrong. I will tell you the truth, because as I deal with people now, the law is always in the back of my mind. Always. It's like it's hanging in the back of my mind always. So I'm always conscious. So if I see two people having problems and they are fighting and I can tell who is wrong and who is right, you should tell them. I should do it, but I do it respectfully. You know what, you're wrong, apologize or do this or do that. Oftentimes people will be shocked when you do that, especially when they're expecting you to take their side. We shouldn't do that. We have to be honest, because Yah is watching. Yah is watching. In verse 9, it says, if he has walked in my statutes and kept my judgment faithfully, he is just. He shall surely live, says Yah. So this is the requirement that Yah is telling us, that to which, if of course, we have in verse 5, when it says, but if a man is just and does what is lawful, and does what is lawful. Lawful mean every law that Yah gave us. What is lawful? Meaning that everything we do is according to his law. Everything we do is lawful according to his law. And also we see in verse 9, Ezekiel 18 verse 9, if he has walked in my statutes and kept my judgment faithfully, meaning that we're not being forced to do it, we're faithfully doing it, we're faithful and we're faithfully following him and doing his word, keeping his word. He is just. This is how we get justified. This is exactly what Paul was talking about in Romans 2:13. Not the hearers of the law are just, but the doers of the law will be justified. So it says in verse 10, if he begets a son, a man that does all of this, who is just in the sight of Yah, if he begets a son who is a robber or a shedder of blood, who does any of these things and does none of those duties, but has eaten on the mountains. Okay, going to people inviting you for Christmas, going over to go eat Christmas food in their house, Easter, New Year, July 4th, Thanksgiving, Turkey, any of that, we shouldn't participate. Yeah, it's saying that anybody who does this, anyone that does this, verse 11, and does none of those duties, but has eaten on the mountains, or defiled his neighbor's wife, if he has oppressed the poor and needy, robbed by violence, not restored the pledge, lifted up his eyes to the idols, or committed abomination. Verse 13, if he has exacted usury or taken increase, something as simple as taking interest when you loan somebody money, that's a big sin. We're not supposed to do that. Verse 13, if he has exacted usury or taken increase, shall he live? He shall not live. If he has done any of these abominations, he shall surely die. His blood shall be upon him. Verse 14, if, however, he begets a son who sees all the sins which his father has done, and considers but does not do likewise. Now, this is the problem, the reason why the Israelites are going through the courses of Deuteronomy chapter 28 right now. This is one of the main reasons why. Because if we can begin to do the things that our ancestors did not do, then those curses will slowly be lifted up from us. But to realize and to see that they got in trouble for breaking Yah's law, and then we ourselves were born into breaking the law, and we realize that we have to keep the law, but we continue to break the law. That is ridiculous, and that's exactly what we're doing today. That's what most people are doing, and that's what we're trying not to do. So we know that they broke the law and they got into trouble. So Yah is saying that in verse 14, if, however, he begets a son who sees all the sins which his father has done, and considers but does not do likewise. Verse 15, who has not eaten on the mountains, nor lifted up his eyes to the idols of the house of Israel, nor defiled his neighbor's wife, has not oppressed anyone, nor withheld a pledge, nor robbed by violence, but has given his bread to the hungry, and has covered the naked with clothing. Verse 17, who has withdrawn his hand from the poor, and not received usury or increase, but has executed judgment and walked in my statutes, he shall not die for the iniquity of his father. He shall surely live. So this is the standard that we can't repeat what our ancestors did or what anyone does. Everybody has to answer for themselves. Yah will judge everyone according to how they kept the law. But if a generation breaks Yah's law, their children comes up and begins to keep Yah's law, then things will change. But if the generation comes up and still ignores Yah's law, then they will continue to go through the things that their father went through. Verse 18, as for his father, because he cruelly oppressed, robbed his brother by violence, and did what is not good among his people, behold, he shall die for his iniquity. Verse 19, yet you say, why should the son not bear the guilt of the father? Because the son has done what is lawful and right, and has kept all my statutes and observed them. he shall surely live. So that's how we're going to obtain eternal life. This is the reason why Yeshua told us in Revelation 22:14 that those that keep Yah's law are the ones that will be allowed to eat from the tree of life. Verse 20, the soul whose sins shall die, the son shall not bear the guilt of the father, nor the father bear the guilt of the son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon himself, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon himself. Now, it says in verse 20, the soul, Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 20, the soul whose sins shall die, the son shall not bear the guilt of the father. Okay, so why are the Israelites now going through the curses of Deuteronomy 28? That doesn't make any sense. That sounds like a contradiction. It sounds like a contradiction because it says that the soul whose sins shall die, the son shall not bear the guilt of the father. Why does he say that? It contradicts the Israelite being punished for the sins of their father. Well, it's not really a contradiction, because if you look at the verse before that, in verse 14 tells you, if, however, he begets a son who sees all the sins which his father has done, and considers but does not do likewise. So the reason why Israelites are still, and people do suffer today, is because they simply just repeat the things that their father did. The lawless, all the abomination and defilement and uncleanness and lawlessness and iniquity and wickedness that their father has done, we simply just keep repeating it. So as long as we're repeating it, if I have children and I don't teach my children the law, they are going to grow up to become lawless, and the whole thing will just continue going. So for those that do look at the whole situation, you know what? Our ancestors was killing their babies and sacrificing them to idols. I'm not going to do that. I will not sacrifice my baby to idols. Our ancestors was eating pork. I'm not going to do that. Our ancestors was doing this, breaking the Sabbath. I'm not going to do that. So if we look at the things that they did and we say no to that, then we will have a different path. We will have a different future. We will have it because, we choose not to go the route that they went to. So it says in verse 20, the soul whose sins shall die, the son shall not bear the guilt of the father, nor the father bear the guilt of the son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon him, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon himself. Verse 21, Ezekiel 18:21. But if a wicked man turns from his sins, which he has committed, keeps all my statutes, and does what is lawful and right, he shall surely live, he shall not die. Verse 22, none of the transgression which he has committed shall be remembered against him, because of the righteousness which he has done, he shall live. So it doesn't matter. Like I used Paul as an example. Paul used to kill people. Paul used to do all that, but he repented. But it's also very important to look at the word. It says in verse 21 of Ezekiel 18, it says, if a wicked man turns from his sins, which he has committed, keeps my statutes, and does what is lawful and right. That word there, lawful, that lawful there is from the word law. When you observe a law, you are lawful. When you accept a law and you keep a law, you're a lawful person. Lawfulness. You're a lawful person. But the Most High is not talking about a man-made law, a Babylonian law, or the laws of the Assyrians, or the Roman law, or the American law. No, Yah is talking about the laws found in Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Exodus, Numbers, his own law. He said that if a wicked man turns from his wickedness and begins to keep his laws, he will forgive all the things that he did in the past. Verse 22, none of his transgressions which he has committed shall be remembered against him because of the righteousness which he has done. What's righteousness? Psalm 119 verse 172. Psalm 119 verses 172 tells you that his law is righteousness. So Yah is saying here in verse 22 of Ezekiel 18, none of his transgression which he has committed shall be remembered against him because of the righteousness which he has done. He shall live because he's now keeping the law. Verse 23, verse 23, do I have any pleasure at all that the wicked shall die, says Yah Elohim, and not that he shall turn from his ways and live? Verse 24, but when a righteous man turns away from his righteousness and commits iniquity and does according to all the abominations that the wicked man does, shall he live? All the righteousness which he has done shall not be remembered because of the unfaithfulness which he is guilty and the sin which he has committed. Because of them he shall die. So a lawless man, a man that keeps the law, a woman that keeps the law, and then all of a sudden they stop keeping the law. Everything they've done in the past, all of that will be they'll be wiped out. If a man or woman that keeps the law all of a sudden start breaking the law, because it's easy and tempting for us to think that, okay, I'm keeping the Sabbath, I'm wearing my tassel, I'm dressing moderately, I'm eating clean food, I'm helping the poor, I'm doing all these things. I must be in a good terms with the Most High now. He wouldn't really care much. He wouldn't really mind if I go and do this or if I do that. Yah will forgive me. Or let me do this and I'll ask him for forgiveness. Whatever that thing is. That's one of the most dangerous and the worst decision that we will ever make. To go back to our old ways, even if it's a little bit. Yah is telling us that as soon as we do that, that's it. We will lose all the stuff we've done, and we will become, like everyone else. We will become, and we'll get to Hebrews chapter 10. That's exactly what Hebrews chapter 10 verse 26 to 31 is talking about. Once we do that, we will actually get into a bigger trouble. It's like someone who never even kept the law will become better than us. If we begin to keep the law and then we backslide, someone who never kept the law will become better than us. Like they will be in a better situation than us. That's terrible. Like we will be in such a big trouble if we are keeping the law and all of a sudden we backslide and begin to break the law. It would have been better off, you will be better off not keeping it in the first place. That's what Hebrews chapter 10 verse 26 to 31 is telling you. So Yah is saying here in verse 24, which is the one that applies to those who are trying to keep the law. Verse 24. But when a righteous man turns away from his righteousness and commits iniquity, that word righteousness means the law. Iniquity also means keep breaking the law. So verse 24, Ezekiel 18:24, but when a righteous man turns away from his righteousness and commits iniquity and does according to all the abominations that the wicked man does, shall he live? All the righteousness which he has done shall not be remembered. So the idea that okay, I'm keeping the Sabbath, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this. I know, I'm still trying to do this. I hope that Yah will understand. He will consider, because I'm doing the other ones, I'm doing this one, I'm doing this one. He will consider, he will understand. No, he's not going to understand. He's telling you right here that he will not understand, basically. Because of the unfaithfulness, because anyone that is keeping the law, if I'm keeping the law and then I backslide, then that's unfaithfulness. That's unfaithfulness to Yah. And Yah deals with people like this much more severe. He punishes anyone that does something like this more than a regular person. Because a regular person may not know what you know. So when we've known all these things and then we backslide, Yah will punish that person more than he will punish someone. He's still going to punish those all the people that break the law. Yah will punish them. Because Yah has put things in the mind of everyone to guide them and let them know that we have to keep the law. And that's what Paul is telling you in Romans chapter 2. The whole chapter in Romans chapter 2. That's exactly what Paul was trying to tell you. That we will be judged according to the law, including the Gentiles and the Hebrews. Everyone will be judged according to the law. Now, are all the Gentiles keeping the law right now? No. But Yah will still judge them. Because take the Chinese, for example. I use them as an example. The Chinese are Gentiles. But they are also communists. They are also, they don't keep the law. They don't keep the law. They don't even practice Christianity. Christianity is trying to go into China. Christians are going in there. But these people are not like a religious people, the Chinese. But they still know, a man still knows not to have sex with his daughter. They still know not to steal. They still know that lying is wrong. So who told them all of that? Because Yah has put in the heart of everyone, He's putting a spirit in us to let us know about the law. Let us know that we have to keep the law. That's why you see the heathen. Most heathen don't commit incest, because who told them that it's wrong? Why wouldn't they do it? Because that law is in their heart. That's exactly what Paul is trying to explain to you in Romans chapter 2, the whole chapter of Romans chapter 2. So when someone is keeping the law and learning all these things and learning about Yah and learning his law, and then they backslide, Yah will punish them more than a regular person, really. So, and that's what Hebrews chapter 10, verse 26 to 31 is trying to tell you. So it says in verse 25, yet you say the way of Yah is not equal. Hear now, O house of Israel, is it not my way which is fair, and your ways which are not fair? Because they're saying that, based on their understanding, the Israelites are now saying that this isn't right. That's not equal. Just like as I gave an example of today, people understanding of forgiveness today have changed. So you can clearly see in verse 25 of Ezekiel that the people of Israel, their understanding of these things have also changed. Even at that time, they were no longer seeing it from Yah's perspective or understanding it from Yah's perspective. So they were saying that this isn't right. This is not fair. So, like I just explained forgiveness to you, what I just explained about forgiveness, most people will disagree. Most people will disagree about that. So to them, according to the world right now, when they talk about forgiveness, they mean that when you forgive, you should also forget. And you should also, when you forgive, they expect you to not ever think about it again, to move on. That's the reason why people will challenge you and will get angry at you. And then they will accuse you of claiming to have forgiven them. They will accuse you and try to guilt you. They try to make you feel guilty and claim that they asked you for forgiveness and you still did not forget. They will put you in a defensive situation where you begin to defend yourself. Why? Just because you take some measures. So today, people's understanding of forgiveness have really changed. But a true forgiveness, when someone does something to you, offends you or whatever, you are supposed to take measures to make sure that that thing doesn't happen again. You forgive them and then you take measures. So it's the same thing that we see here in verse 25, where people's understanding have changed and they no longer sees it the way that Yah sees it. So in verse 26 of Ezekiel, it says, Ezekiel chapter 18:26, when a righteous man turns away from his righteousness, commits iniquity, which is lawlessness, and dies in it, it is because of the iniquity or lawlessness which he has done that he dies. Verse 27, again, when a wicked man turns from his wickedness which he committed and does what is lawful, meaning he's keeping the law and right, he preserves himself alive. Remember what Paul said to us in Philippians 2:12, walk out your own salvation with fear and trembling. So Ezekiel chapter 18 verse 27, Ezekiel 18:27, again, when a wicked man turns away from the wickedness which he had committed and does what is lawful, Yah's law, and right, he preserves himself alive. Verse 28, because he considers and turns from all the transgression which he committed, he shall surely live, he shall not die. So in a world like the world we live in right now, in a world run by the Gentiles, in a world where they don't believe in afterlife, in a world where you have man-made law as the laws, in a world where you have man-made law as the laws. So whose standard do you follow to live? Because Yah is talking about over here, the Most High is talking about in verse 28, because he considers and turns from all the transgressions which he committed, he shall surely live. So who is against the transgression that this man committed? Yah. So that means that man or woman has to now live the way that Yah wants us to live. That's the law and the way that Yah is talking about in Ezekiel. It has nothing to do with man-made law. Christians will twist this like they've twisted Romans chapter 13. According to Christians, Romans chapter 13 is talking about the worldly government. No, it's talking about the government that Yah has put in place. We're not supposed to disobey that government, not man-made government. No. So it says in verse 29, yet the house of Israel say, the way of Yah is not fair. O house of Israel, is it not my way which are fair, and your ways which are not? Verse 30, therefore I will judge you, O house of Israel, everyone according to his ways, says Yah Elohim. Repent and turn from all your transgression, so that the iniquity will not be your ruin. So Yah is calling us here to repent and turn from all our transgression. Again, transgression. What is transgression? To breaking law. So whose law? Yah's law. Yah is telling us to repent in Ezekiel chapter 18 verse 30. Repent and turn from all your transgression, all our lawlessness, from breaking his law. Because it says in 1 John 3:4, sin is the transgression of the law. Sin is the transgression of the law. Sin is the breaking of Yah's law. That's what sin is. So Yah is calling us, therefore, I will judge you, O house of Israel, everyone according to his ways, says Yah Elohim. Repent and turn from all your transgression, so that iniquity will not be your ruin. Verse 31, cast away from you all the transgressions which you have committed, and get yourselves a new heart and a new spirit. For why should you die, O house of Israel? For I have no pleasure in the death of one who dies, says Yah Elohim. Therefore turn and live. So he says in verse 31, cast away from you all the transgressions which you have committed, and get yourselves a new heart and a new spirit. So new heart and a new spirit. If you think of who you are or who you were 5 years ago, I'm sure, I know that you are no longer who you used to be. You know, you used to live your life basically like everyone else. You know, if somebody comes up to you 5 years ago, came up to you 5 years ago and had questioned you about the way you're living, you wouldn't see anything wrong with that. But over the years now, you've realized you know what, I have to make some changes. I have to make some changes. I have to, you know, like for example, you brother Alexander, could you mute yourself? Can you touch that mute button on your phone? So, because I'm hearing a feedback. So you've definitely looked at your life, and you yourself decided that you needed to make some changes. So what you were doing is that you decided to get a new heart, because to remember Jeremiah chapter 17. In Jeremiah chapter 17, it says that our heart is deceitful. Our heart is wicked. That's the heart that we have. That's the one that we were born with. So our heart, when we talk about our heart, a lot of things is in our heart. A lot of things is in our heart. A lot of things, it's not just the physical heart itself. Not the physical heart that is red and bloody and stuff. No, that's not what Yah is telling. Yah is not telling you to go get an implant. Yah is not telling us to go to the hospital and get a brand new heart, to, you know, go cut out the old heart and get an implant and put a new heart in your heart. No, it's not a physical thing. What Yah is talking about here is spiritual, basically what you're doing right now. You know, the journey that you are on right now. That's what Yah is calling us to do. And he's saying that that's the way we are going to live. That's what it says. It says in verse 31, Ezekiel chapter 18:31, cast away from you all the transgressions which you have committed, and get yourself a new heart and a new spirit. So we're definitely trying to cast away all those transgression, all those lawlessness. You know, that's why we are here today. We've cast away Sunday worship, and then eventually casted away Saturday worship. And, you know, so we're doing that. We're trying to do that, and we have to do it as much as we can. We have to cast away all the transgression. We have to cast away all the transgression. But also, Yah says to get a new heart. Does that mean that we should go sign up and get in line and cut out our heart and throw it away and get a brand new physical heart? No. Yah is talking about behavior, a new heart and a new spirit. So if you used to be someone who is very angry in the past, who is, you don't have control over your anger, you have to now begin to, let that go. If you're someone that steals in the past, that needs to now go. If you're someone that, fornicate, whatever it is, that there's a lot of stuff I used to do in the past, I had to now let those things go. So even things that I was dying to have an opportunity to do in the past, even now, when you give it to me for free, I will not even because I'm trying to get a new heart. I'm no longer thinking the way I used to think, like it says in Jeremiah chapter 17 about our heart. Our heart is very, very wicked and deceitful. And Yah is calling us not to follow our heart. Ezekiel chapter 17, verse 9, it says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, Yah, search the heart and I test the mind, even to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his doings. So the things we do, think of this. This is a perfect picture. Follow your heart. Oh, follow your heart. Just follow your heart. That's what the Gentiles will tell you. The Gentiles will advise you to follow your heart. Just follow your heart. No, we don't follow our heart because our heart is deceitful. If I follow my heart, I will rob you if I have an opportunity. Because if my heart tells me to do it, I will do it. I will rape you if I have an opportunity. I will steal from you. I will kill you if I can. Whatever. Because I'm following my heart. And if everybody begins to follow their heart like the Gentiles will tell you to do, if everybody, or like they will suggest, this world will be it's already a mess right now by us following our heart. Because it's through following our heart that people don't keep the law anymore. Because their heart tells them that we don't have to do it anymore. So in a world where everyone is following their heart, somebody's heart may tell them that they need to have that thing that you have. And if they have an opportunity to take it from you, they will take it from you. Because their heart wants them to have it. Their heart desires it. So we shouldn't be following our heart, because our heart is deceitful. And eventually our heart leads us into the things that we do. That's why it says in Ezekiel chapter 17, look at what it says at the end. Ezekiel chapter 17, it says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, Yah, searches the heart. I test the mind, even to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his doings. The things that we think in our heart eventually leads to the things that we do. We have to think about it in our mind. Yah also uses he uses two words, heart and mind. In verse 10, our heart, Yah searches the heart, and then I test the mind. And then he says, even to give every man according to his ways, according to his doings. Because before we do things, we think about it. We thought about it, and then we do it. So Yah is telling us not to follow our heart. But the Gentiles suggest that we should follow our heart. But Yah wants us to follow his laws, to live lawfully, to live according to his judgments, his statutes that he gave us. That's what we're supposed to live by. So if I'm following my heart, I will be very dangerous for you to be around me. You will be very dangerous. That's why I don't trust those who don't keep the law. I'm very, very suspicious and very weary of those that don't keep the law. But if you're keeping the law, then I'm not going to be, because I know that you're living according to the law. And that's what what he's telling us to do. So when he says at the end of Ezekiel that in verse 31, to get a new spirit and a new heart, it doesn't mean physical. It means that if we begin to live according to his laws, then we are no longer following our heart. We're no longer following, living according to the way that everyone is living. We are now living according to his law. So we're no longer being guided by our heart. Because sometimes I do smell good food, like food that smell really good. But I want to make sure, does it have pork in it? If it has pork, no, thank you very much. Does it have shrimp in it? If it has shrimp, no, thank you very much. So it may smell good. My heart may desire that pork or that food, but if it has anything that is lawless, then I can't do it. And this is something that we have to strongly desire. So that's how we get a new heart, like Yah have told us to do. And anyone that does this, of course, I will keep reminding you, when you begin to do this, people will think you're crazy. People will think you've lost your mind. You've joined a cult. It's bound to happen. So it's bound to happen. It's going to happen. That's for sure. I will be lying to you if I don't. It's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, then you're not doing something right. If everyone is fine with you and okay with you, then you're not doing it right. Because you cannot. It's just something is wrong somewhere. But when people think you're crazy, you lost your mind, then you're beginning to do something. You're beginning to do some things right. So, according to Yah, when it comes to forgiveness, if we're keeping the law and we all of a sudden abandon the law and break, even if it's one, we break it, at that point, all the stuff we've done, Yah will forget that. And so if we're going to look at some examples and then we close. We're looking at forgiveness from Yah's perspective. So think of Adam. Yah created him. And everything was fine. He goes to work in the morning. He walks in the garden. And then Yah created Eve, who was there to serve Adam while Adam was serving Yah. And then look at what happened when they broke Yah's law. You see how Yah kicked them out? So all the good stuff that Adam did, all his obedience and everything, that faithfulness and everything that he was doing in the garden, none of that was remembered anymore. Now that's the God that we worship. It's very important to understand this God, because this God is different from the one that we've been taught. So look at, immediately they sinned, they were kicked out. Yah no longer remember all the stuff that he did in the past. He drove them out. Second example, Moses. When Moses was, think of Moses. I mean, if anybody should have made it into the promised land, it should be Moses. It should be Moshe. But all the stuff that he went through, all the insults that he got from the Israelites, all the stress and insult and all the stuff that he went through because of the law. One, lawlessness. One was what kept Moses out of the promised land. So a human being would have thought about, okay, he's been faithful, he's been doing all these things in the past, all right, but Yah didn't do that. Yah told him what to do. He went and did something else. He was told to speak to the rock. He went and struck the rock. And that cost him his entrance into the promised land. So I'm just giving you this example so that you can see what Yah says in Ezekiel in action. Starting with Adam. Automatic kick, rejection. He kicks them out. And then Moses. That was what cost him and Aaron. They couldn't make it in. These are men that served Yah. They served Yah. So, but as soon as they went against Yah's law, they were not allowed to make it into the promised land. Now, let's slow down a little bit with Moses. Let's slow down a little bit. Will Moses make it into the promised land? Will he make it into the kingdom? Well, Yah will decide. But so just because he is so close to Yah and have basically joined that elite club that I talked about earlier, that doesn't mean that Yah will actually, if the closer to you get to Yah, the more instantly he will punish you. The closer you get to him, when you do something wrong, the more instantly he will punish you. Those who don't obey his law and do his will, he doesn't punish them immediately. He doesn't punish them right away. They will live their life and eat pork and fornicate, break the Sabbath, steal, murder, do whatever, and they will die and nothing happens, right? And you're thinking that nothing will happen. No, something will happen. So, but for those that do fear Yah and are very close to Yah and keep his commandment, when they do sin, Yah punish them right away. The reason why he does it right away is so he doesn't have to do it later, because he already knows your future. He knows that you will make it through the judgment. Like so he takes care of it. So he punishes his children right away, immediately. Those that are not his children, he just allows them to do whatever they want, because they are doomed anyway. They are, so what's the point? They are condemned already immediately. So that's why you see instant punishment on his children immediately. And that will pass, like look at what's his name? I'm sorry, Judas. He did what he did. He repented. He committed suicide. Now, when you go into the kingdom, as we see in Revelation, are you not going to see the 12 gates? You're going to see the 12 gates. You're still going to see, so his place is still there. His place is there, but was he not punished? Was he not, was he didn't? So that's the for those that the downside with coming so close to Yah is that Yah will punish you with instant punishment. This happened to David more than once. When he counted the Israelites, Yah told him to choose from 3 punishment. 3. To choose from 3. So the question is not whether he's going to be forgiven or not, or no. The question was choose from 1. I'm going to punish you. That's it. There's no negotiation on that. Choose from 1. And at the end of the day, David chose to be punished by Yah instead of being handed over into the hands of people for them to punish him. So you have Moses, who never made it into the promised land. But then you have the children of those that came out of Egypt that made it into the promised land. Their father did not make it in because their father broke the law. And Yah said that whoever breaks the law will not make it in. So they didn't make it in because they broke the law. But their children that came after them, that kept the law, made it in. And then you have David, who also committed sin by killing a man after taking his wife, after defiling his wife. Even though Yah forgave him, Yah still punished him. So that's another example. There are different examples of this, of how Yah, deals with his people. Like the Israelite as a whole, the whole nation of Israel right now is under punishment. And that's the number one reason why the Most High is quiet. Quiet. Now, a lot of people think of that, and I hope that you don't think that there's no God. What's going on right now is that you have a child that have been misbehaving. You kept threatening your child. You kept making threats. Stop doing that. I'm going to spank you. I'm going to lock you in your room for 10 days. Or I'm going to lock you in your room for 30 minutes. Like people do today, right? That's punishment that people give today. They will lock their children in a room or go to your room. Go to your room. So imagine a parent telling a child, if you don't stop doing this, you're going to go to your room and you will be in there for an hour. If you don't stop doing this, I'm going to send you in your room and you'll be there for an hour. So the parent kept saying this, kept saying this, kept saying this, and kept saying this. And the child kept disobeying and kept disobeying. You see, at some point, you're going to have to do what you said. Because if you keep threatening your child that you will punish them, and the punishment that is that you send them into a room, and they will be in that room for 1 hour. If you keep telling them that and you actually don't do it, you are spoiling that child. And they will never take you serious. Because they see you keep saying stuff over and over that you will do this and you never get to do it. You know, at some point it comes to a point that when you say, they will laugh at you. They will just laugh at you when you say it. Because you keep saying that you will punish them, but you never get to do it. So the Most High, you have to understand that what's going on right now, as of this very moment, is that Yah kept threatening the Israelites. If you don't keep my laws, I will scatter you in the four corners of the earth, and your enemies will rule over you. You will serve your enemies in a land that you don't know. He kept warning them through different prophets. Sometimes they will keep the law, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But at some point, Yah had to carry out that threat. This is exactly what Yah was threatening the Israelites with. That he will scatter them in the four corners of the earth, and that they will serve their enemies. Let's see that in Jeremiah in the same chapter 17. If you go up to verse 4. Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 4. And you, even yourself, shall let go of your heritage, or discontinue from your heritage, which I gave you. And I will cause you to serve your enemies in a land which you do not know. For you have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever. So he kept warning them. And this is the reason why God does not speak right now. I'm telling you, I'm showing you why he's quiet. He's punishing his people right now. Now, like the Bible says that a day is like 1,000 years to Yah. 1,000 years is like a day. So many generations have come and gone, and this punishment is still going on. Many people have been born, they grew up, they lived within that punishment, and they got old, and they died within that punishment, and they are gone. So many people have died, and Yah still haven't said anything. Because there's a period of time he said that this punishment will go on. And like a parent that finally got fed up and put that child into that room to punish them. If you have been threatening your child that you put them into a room and they will be there for 1 hour, if they don't stop running around the house and just messing up the house and running around and making noise, if you keep making that threat, first of all, if you don't keep that threat, your child will not take you serious. And if you do put that child in that room and then all of a sudden you go put them out without actually doing exactly what you said, they will not take you seriously. So Yah is saying through Prophet Jeremiah that he will cause his people to discontinue from their heritage, meaning that they will forget who they are. And then he said that I will cause you to serve your enemies in a land which you do not know. So that's the reason why the Most High is not saying anything right now. He's quiet. And this is a little bit more explained in Hosea. In that place that people love to read in Hosea. But they just pick the beginning of the verse. This particular verse in Hosea, People don't usually read the whole verse. They do not read the whole verse. They simply pick and choose the beginning part. In Hosea chapter 4 verse 6, they only read the beginning. They don't read the complete verse. But when you read the complete verse in Hosea chapter 4 verse 6, you see the main point that Yah was trying to make. Hosea chapter 4 verse 6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. That's all people will read. That's it. When they quote this place, they're only reading only this. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. But they don't read this part. Because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject you from being a priest for me. Because you have forgotten the law of your Elohim, I will also forget your children. So why will Yah be talking about the children? Because first of all, the reason why they are being destroyed, because they forgot the law. And he tells you that because you have forgotten the law of your God, the law of your Elohim, I will also forget your children. So when they do go into captivity, Yah will be quiet, like it said in Deuteronomy chapter 32. So Yah is just quiet right now, watching what's happening until that punishment will be over. This is also very much well explained in Luke chapter 21. Yeshua talked about this in Luke 21. Luke chapter 21. So we're talking about forgiveness and punishment. When Yah does punish somebody, that punishment, he will punish them all the way. And right now you are living within one of those punishments. And like as I said, there has been many generations that have come and gone. And they lived and died of old age. And they were, so this is something that will happen over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Close to 2,000 years. It's been going on since 70 AD. Since 70 AD, that was when this began. So, and Yeshua talked about it in Luke chapter 21. In Luke 21, Yeshua says in Luke 21 from verse 20, Luke 21 from verse 20, Yeshua talked about this punishment that I'm talking about. And when you read it, you see that Yah is going to be quiet. And Yah is going to be doing the things that he said. So in Luke 21 from verse 20, it says, but when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you know that its dissolution is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let those who are in midst of her okay, so that mountains there, some translations will say wilderness. Some translation will say wilderness. Some translations will say the mountains. But this is referring to the place that the Hebrews have always fled to. It's referring to the area that they have always fled to, the place that they fled when they were fleeing from famine, which was Egypt in Africa. When Mary and Joseph fled, they also fled into Africa. Mary and Joseph fled into Africa. The Israelites also fled into Africa when they were fleeing from famine. And Yeshua is also calling, telling the people here, because this punishment is inevitable. Because Yah said so. Like a parent that has been making a threat. At some point, he has to carry out the threat. So in Luke chapter 21, it says, but when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you know that its dissolution is near. Verse 21, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains or to the wilderness, which is, Africa, basically, where they've always fled to. But this is something we can study if you find it confusing or you think it's not so, we can spend some other time and study and see, where that mountain is. Let those who are in the midst of her depart, and let not those who are in the country enter. So in Luke 21:21, Luke chapter 21:21, look at what it's saying. It's talking about let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. So they have to get out of Judea. This is their land. Yeshua was telling them, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, get out. Get out. And then it says, let those who are in the midst of her depart. Let those who are in the country. let not those who are in the country enter. Those who are not really inside at that point, don't even go in. For those of you who are outside, get out and flee to the mountains. But why? Verse 22. For these are days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. So what was that thing that was written that will be fulfilled? So he's telling the Israelites to get out of when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, get out, run, flee to the mountains. For those of you who are not inside, don't even go in, get out. And then it says in verse 23 or verse 22, Luke 21:22, for these are the days of vengeance. Whose vengeance? Yah's vengeance. That all things which are written may be fulfilled. All right, so let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 4 and see exactly what was written in Deuteronomy chapter 4. Deuteronomy chapter 4 and see what Yeshua was talking about. Deuteronomy chapter 4. You see exactly what Yeshua was referring to that was written that needs to be fulfilled. Again, like a parent that is making a threat. A parent kept threatening the child, you better do this, you better, or stop doing that, or else, you do this, or else, you do this, or else. At some point, you're going to have to carry out your threat. So it says in Deuteronomy, let's say Deuteronomy chapter 4, let's start from verse 25. Deuteronomy chapter 4 from verse 25. Deuteronomy chapter 4 from verse 25. This was when the Israelites came out of Egypt and Yah was speaking to them. And this is what was written. This is a threat that Yah made. This is a threat that Yah made to the Israelite. And that was what Yeshua was referring to in Luke 21. So Deuteronomy chapter 4 from verse 25. Verse 25 of Deuteronomy chapter 4. When you begot children and grandchildren and have grown old in the land and act corruptly and make carved image in the form of anything, because Yah wants us not to do that. No images, no cross, no graven image. Absolutely not. Picture is okay, but graven image, no. But Yah told us not to do this. Do they do this? Yes, they did. So this is a threat. When you begot children and grandchildren and have grown old in the land, Yah was speaking to the Israelite. That was the threat. So, because I said this so that he's talking about the children, and he will talk about those in the future. So this was a very significant threat that Yah made to the Israelites when they came out of Egypt. When you begot children and grandchildren and have grown old in the land and act corruptly and make carved image in the form of anything, keychain, cute things, it doesn't matter. No carved image of whatsoever. It doesn't matter how cute it looks. It doesn't matter how nice. It doesn't matter. He's saying over here in Deuteronomy chapter 4. Deuteronomy chapter 4, no making of any image. Yah have already warned us on that already. He warned us not to do this initially. So he's saying that if we do this, he will tell us exactly what he was going to do. And that's the threat that Yeshua was referring to. So, Deuteronomy chapter 4, and do evil in the sight of Yah. Verse 25, I'm reading from verse 25. When you begot children and grandchildren and have grown old in the land and act corruptly and make carved image in the form of anything and do evil in the sight of Yah your Elohim to provoke him to anger. Verse 26, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day that you will soon utterly perish from the land. which you crossed over Jordan to possess. Okay, I'm going to read that verse 26 again, because remember that Yeshua was telling them, get out. If you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, run, get out. Don't even, if you are outside, don't go back. And that's the threat over here that we're reading. So it says in verse, and this happened in 70 AD. When you get a chance, go and study about the Roman invasion of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Yah sent them. The Most High God sent them to come and carry out his punishment. So it says in verse 26, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that you will soon utterly perish from the land which you cross over the Jordan to possess. You will not prolong your days in it, but will utterly be destroyed. Verse 27. And Yah your Elohim, and Yah, verse 27, Deuteronomy chapter 4:27. And Yah will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in numbers among the nations where Yah will drive you. And there you will serve gods, the works of man's hand, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear, nor eat nor smell. And that's really one of the main things that we're doing today, serving the gods of the heathen. We're serving the gods of the heathen today, because according to the book of Psalm, the gods of the heathens are materialism. Their God is materialism. In Psalm 135, the God of the heathen, their God is materialism. Silver and gold is their God. Money, materialism, silver and gold. And that's why they're very materialistic. And we are literally like, we are so deep into this. I think at this point, we actually serve their God more than they, because we are now so materialistic that when you talk about living the way that Yah wants us to live, like you see, like you see in 1 Timothy chapter 6, when you talk about living the way that Yah wants us to live, people will turn around and look at you like, what, are you crazy? So it's like, you have to be materialistic. You got to be materialistic today. You have to, but the way that Yah wants us to live is now strange to people, because we're so deep into worshiping the gods of the heathen. So it says in Psalm 135 verse 15, the idols of the nations are silver and gold, the work of man's hand. They have mouth, but they do not speak. They have eyes, but they do not see. They have ears, but they do not hear. Nor is there any breath in their mouth. Materialism. Silver and gold. Silver is the official money that God wants us to use. Silver. That was what people used to use as money before. Now you're using paper money that the Gentiles have now offered the world. So, materialism. So when trying to make money trumps keeping Yah's law, then you are literally worshiping the God of the Gentiles, because silver and gold is their God. Money and materialism. Money and materialism. So people will say, people will say stuff like, well, I have to work. Well, I have to do this. Yeah, you have to do it, but that cannot trump, that can come first. You can't disobey Yah in order to do those things. Then that's your God. So today, you see the process that even before people are born, sometimes the parents have already decided that he or she is going to be a doctor. He or she will be a lawyer. He or she will be this. And then as soon as they're born, they're put into that process, put into the synagogue of Satan that they call the school system, where, they put the children into that system. And at the end of the day, what is this all about? It's all about money. When there's a particular way that we're told to live, If we have food and shelter and food and water, that's all we need. But that's not what people seek after today. We seek beyond that today. Today we want to have the best of everything, and oftentimes you're gonna have to pay like more money to get that, and oftentimes it means that you have to have a certain kind of a job to be able to afford that. You're gonna have to have a certain kind of a job to be able to afford certain neighborhoods and certain kind of cars. So, but today, most of us by default have been programmed to go after the highest of all of these things. But the thing is that you're not just going to obtain it just because you want it. You will obtain it if you're willing to disobey Yah. Because you're going to most likely have to work Monday through Friday. You will most likely have to have a schedule that you will work whenever they want you to work. That means that you cannot keep the Sabbath in order to be able to obtain the money and be able to buy those things. So we are so obsessed with materialism, which is the God of the Gentiles. As of today, their God is materialism. And because they don't believe in afterlife, they don't believe there's a life after this, they're very materialistic, and they are to them, it's just like it's all about now. It's all about getting as much as they can get right now and right here and right now. So if you see in 1 Timothy chapter 6 from verse 6 to verse 10, we see a totally different way of living that Yah wants us to live. Completely different. And if you dare try to live your life this way, people will say, of course, that you've lost your mind. If you just want to live a moderate lifestyle, instead of living in a big giant mansion, you can just maybe build your own little tiny house or rent a small place, rent a small room. Or if you choose to not live a materialistic lifestyle, people will try to, even quote the Bible to you and quote, what about this person? What about this? What about that? The children of God is supposed to be this. They're supposed to do that. They're supposed to not like this. But that's not really biblical. But if you look at 1 Timothy chapter 6, from verse 6 to verse 10, you see the way that Yah wants us to live. Also, Yeshua tells us in Matthew chapter 6 about, how to live a moderate lifestyle. So today, paganism is very much alive. It's not only Christianity, it's also materialism. If paying mortgage and paying car note and putting food on the table, if you have to break the Sabbath and not and wear pants if you're a woman and not cover your head and just disobey Yah's law to do those things, you are deep into paganism. You are in paganism, whether you're a man or woman. If you have to shave your beard because your job doesn't allow you to have a beard, you are deep in paganism. Because you have to disobey Yah's law by shaving your beard so you can keep that job, so they can give you money, so you can pay rent, so you can pay for the car note, so you can buy food. You are worshiping a pagan god in order to get those things. That's paganism right there. If you have to send your children to school, which most of these schools, I got a message from a young man that was trying to figure out what to do because he's in high school and the high school requires that he must shave. He must shave his beard. Well, we have a problem because Leviticus chapter 19:27, Yah said that we shouldn't destroy the edges of our beard. Here you have a Gentile, the heathen, requiring this child that he must shave while he's beginning to grow his beard. He was stunned. He doesn't know what to do. He couldn't talk to his parents because his mom, of course, his mom was going to be so mad at him for not doing what the school said. So not only do we practice this paganism, but we push our children into it also. It is paganism. Any institution or any people that requires you to go against Yah's word in order for you to obtain whatever, you have to say no. That's exactly what the Israelites faced in Babylon with Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Look at how they responded. That's how we have to respond. The Gentiles and the heathen will always come up with strange gods and foreign gods and strange gods, and they will always do this. We have to resist. If you have to send your daughters to school, and they're wearing pants to go to school, because some schools have uniform, they require them to wear pants, or whatever. If that's paganism right there, that's a strange god. So when we read about the Israelites worshiping strange god, it's easy for us right now to think, oh man, they are so dumb, they were so stupid. No, we have this thing right in our face today. The heathens that are around us today, their god is not some strange god somewhere. Their god is materialism. It tells you that it's silver and gold. That's the god of the Gentiles. Some Bible translation will say the heathen. Some Bible translation will say the nations. Some will say the Gentiles. The gods of the Gentiles. Brother Alexander, could you please mute yourself? I'm hearing a feedback. So the gods of the Gentiles are silver and gold, money, and their materialism. Materialism, like cars and houses. It doesn't mean that you should be homeless, but trying to get those things cannot get in the way of keeping Yah's law. If you can build a little tiny house that will actually belong to you, you will be better off in building your own little tiny house that will actually be beautiful. You can look on YouTube and see how those beautiful, nice, tiny houses. It may be small. I've seen families of 4 families living in that tiny thing. If you're creative and you build a tiny house, it may be small, but it's yours, because you don't have to worry about rent and mortgage. You see how you can begin to untie yourself from the gods of the Gentiles, from their system. So it may be small, but it's yours. No more mortgage, no more rent. So, but the problem is that most people don't want that. Most people would not want that. Most people want to live in a big house, in a nice neighborhood. Same thing with cars. You know, you have, all cars are cars, but you have cars that are like $100,000 and you have cars that are like $1,000. But they can still take you to the same place, to the same destination. So, but the thing is that we're so deep into paganism today. We're thinking that, oh, we came out of Christianity, but the other part of pagan, no, we come out of Christianity, which is obvious, but you have the other deeper paganism, which is materialism, that we have to also untie ourselves from. Paganism, materialism, anything that, in order for you to obtain that thing, you have to disobey Yah's law. That's paganism right there. Materialism. That's when we're not supposed to do that. And like as I said in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6 to verse 10. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6 to verse 10 is where you're going to see the standard that the way we're supposed to live. And also Matthew chapter 6 from verse 28, you will also see the way that Yeshua wants us to live. And the problem is that if you dare try to live that way, people will probably say that you're homeless. They will probably say that you're crazy. Of course, that's what they will always say, that you're crazy. So back to Deuteronomy chapter 4. So this was the threat that Yah made. And part of that threat is that, part of the things that will make Yah to carry out the threat is if we practice paganism. That's why we had to go into those places to go see, you know, in 1 Timothy chapter 6. So part of the threat is that it's paganism. So, and in Deuteronomy chapter 4 Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 26, I call on heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that you will surely perish from the land which you cross over the Jordan to possess. You will not prolong your days in it, but will utterly be destroyed, or will be utterly destroyed. Verse 27, and Yah will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in numbers among the nations where Yah will drive you, and there you will serve other gods, and the works of man's hand, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. A house is built with wood and stone. So these materialism, we have to be careful not to, because trying to obtain them, you're going to have to work, right? That's service. You're serving their God. You're serving them to get money to obtain these things. We have to be very smart. That's why your children has to be trained to have skills. Your sons must learn skills. So in that way, they can be in control of their schedule, in control of their business. You cannot go through the process that people do go today by putting their children into the school system and let them obtain a degree. That degree is a certificate into slavery, because that certificate means nothing if your child do not go to serve the Gentiles, and he or she is at the mercy of the Gentiles. They can fire them at any time. That certificate, that bachelor's degree, that master's degree, that PhD means nothing if you're not willing to serve the Gentiles. As long as you're serving them, then they will give you money. But if you decide to keep the Sabbath, grow your beard, or dress moderately, we will most likely run into a problem. So you have to prepare your sons to learn a trade so they can start their own business. Instead of working for someone, they can hire people to work for them. So we have to navigate and be smart not to fall into the temptations and fall into the situation where we will have to serve the heathen. When you're serving the heathen to earn a living, you're doomed. You are at their mercies. When you are at the mercy, when you're working for someone that that fears Yah, when you are working for someone that fears the Most High, you don't have to worry about keeping the Sabbath. You don't have to worry about keeping the feast. You don't have to worry any of that because they fear Yah. But when you're working for the heathen, you are doomed, because there will be struggles and fights over you trying to do those things. They will not always agree to let you do those things. At some point, they will fire you. So we have to be careful not to put ourselves in the situation where we'll be vulnerable, that we cannot eat unless we work for the heathen. Rather, we have to find a way to be self-sufficient and be independent. And you have to also prepare your children while they were little for that, to be able to be self-sufficient and not depend on the heathens. Rather, to learn a skill so that wherever they go in the world, they will be able to survive and not have to walk around with suit and tie and certificate looking for a job, because they will not always be able to survive in anywhere that they go. If he's a mechanic, a carpenter, a welder, pretty much anywhere they go, they will be able to find work and be able to survive. But that will not always be the case if they are walking around with some piece of paper that they obtain after 4 years somewhere. So this is just, for those who don't fear Yah, they are in bondage and living through this misery and serving other gods. So part of the things that Yah said will happen to the Israelites when they get scattered in the four corners of the earth, he said that they will serve other gods, gods of wood and stone. That's part of the things that will happen, and that's exactly what's happening today. Verse 29, Deuteronomy chapter 4:29, was still looking at the threat that Yah made that he had to carry out. This is the reason why he's no longer talking today. He's no longer speaking, because he's waiting for the punishment that he threatened to be fulfilled. His people are being punished because of the things that he warned them. If you do this, I'm going to punish you. It's happening today. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 29. But from there you will seek Yah. From where? From what we saw in verse 27. Deuteronomy chapter 4, 27. And Yah will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in numbers among the nations where Yah will drive you. And there you will serve other gods. You will serve gods, the works of man's hand, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. Verse 29, but from there you will seek Yah, your Elohim, and you will find him. If, I like to emphasize on this if. This if is a big gigantic if. If. We can only find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. And this is the problem today. A lot of people have woken up to what's going on and to who they are, but they don't realize, they haven't come to the point of seeking Yah with all our heart and with all our soul. We have to do this. If I have any hesitant to keeping a particular law, or I have to be forced to do it, or I have to be pressured to do it, or I'm doing it, then at that point I'm not doing it with all my heart and with all my soul. But if I'm doing it, whether anybody sees me or not, it doesn't matter if anybody sees me, it doesn't matter if anybody is looking. If I do Yah's law, if I do his law because I love his law, then at that point I'm beginning to seek him with all my heart and with all my soul. And even when nobody is looking, I'm still doing it. Even when nobody is watching me, I'm still doing it. Like when I live alone, and I still wear my tassel. I'm wearing my tassel where I am right now. I wear my tassel even when I'm by myself. I wear it all the time, except for when I'm about to shower. I will take off my clothes. But I make sure that I have my tassel on me all the time. But nobody sees that, you know. I'm not wearing it, oh, this person is coming or this person is around, let me put on my tassel. No. I wear it all the time when people are watching, when nobody is watching. So I could break certain laws because nobody is watching, but I still not do it. I could do certain things. I could look at certain things. I could do there are things I could do, but I know that Yah is watching me. So what I'm really trying to do is I want to worship him with all my heart and with all my soul. It's not always easy, but I want to do it. And when Yah sees that you want to do it, then he will begin to enable you, to do it. We have to do it. We have to do it with all. So when we keep the law, even when nobody sees us, even when we are among people that nobody knows us, and we can easily do things and get away. One time someone called me on the phone and he was like describing to me how he was in the hotel room with this woman, with a woman that he wasn't married to. I was like shocked. I was shocked because of a reason. There was a reason why. Because this is supposed to be a Christian, right? So he traveled to a different country and, picked up what seems to be, I guess, a prostitute and took her to a hotel room. And then after that, he called me from that country. I was like a little bit shocked. But the point is that, you see, when I asked him, he told me, oh, no, I can never do that in my city. I cannot do that in the city. And I was like, why? He was like, because the city is like small. He was telling me that his point was that anybody can see me and my wife will find out. That's what he was trying to tell me. So his point was that I will never do such a thing where I live, because you never know. Somebody may see him, So he would never do that. But guess what? He jumps into a plane, travels to a different country, and he was able to do it there. Did his wife or so-called wife know? No. But he was able to call me on the phone and tell me, what he did and stuff like that. This was a long time ago. But the point I'm trying to make is that when someone is keeping the law, when you're dealing with a man that keeps the law, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about that. And when someone is keeping the law, you see, if this man fears Yah, he would never do that. But because he doesn't fear Yah, see, he gets away from his wife, he's able to do those things. But when we are fearing Yah, That's the opposite of that. That's totally like the opposite of that, because whether someone sees us or not, it doesn't matter. Whether somebody knows we're lying or not, we can lie. We cannot lie. We cannot steal. We cannot cheat. We cannot fornicate. We cannot commit adultery. We can do those things, whether we are by ourselves or not. We can do that. That's once you get to that point, then you're beginning to fall into the category of what you see in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 29. Yah said, but from there you will seek Yah, your Elohim, and you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. Someone that fears Yah and seeks Yah with all their heart and with all their soul will keep his laws wherever they are, whether somebody is looking or not, whether somebody is watching or not, it doesn't matter. They will keep it, whether they're even if they're by themselves, they will still keep it. Verse 30, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 30. When you are in distress and all these things come upon you in the later days, and you turn to Yah, your Elohim, and obey his voice. So this just summarizes everything that is going on right now. This was a threat that was made to the Israelites. He says in verse 30, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 30, when you are in distress and all these things come upon you in the later days. This began in 70 AD, and it's been on from that time till this day. It's on. It started in 70 AD, and it's been on from that time. That was when the Israelites was kicked out, and you clearly see Yeshua telling them to get out. Don't come in. Those who are outside, don't come in. Those who are inside, get out. It's been on from that time till now, till this very moment. But Yah tells us the way we can make things right by seeking him with all our heart and with all our soul, and by obeying his voice. What is Yah's voice? The law. This is his word. That's the only way we can make things right. So this was the threat. And the thing in verse 30, he talks about the distress and all these things come upon you. That's the one you see in chapter 28 and Leviticus 26. Those causes are the distress and the things that he talks about that will come upon them. This is the reason why that the Most High is not talking right now. He's not saying anything, because these things has to happen. It started in 70 AD. It all started in 70 AD. Again, go and study. I don't really recommend you go, begin to look into that today. But if you get a chance, you may be able to see some videos on YouTube about the Roman invasion of Jerusalem in 70 AD. That was when this began. That was when that great tribulation began. According to the Christians, the great tribulation will be in the future. No, it started in 70 AD. And that was when they were driven out of their land. All right, so back to Luke chapter 21. Luke 21. Again, we're looking at Yah's forgiveness. The forgiveness from Yah and punishment from Yah. And we've looked at how to be forgiven. Repentance and forgiveness from Yah. We've looked at that. But we also saw the punishment with Adam, Moshe, David. And now we're looking at the Israelites as a whole. The whole nation is under punishment now. So back to Luke chapter 21. So in Luke chapter 21, there's some things that Yah said that we're looking at that we need to complete right now. Luke chapter 21. So in Luke chapter 21, the reason why we went into the Deuteronomy chapter 4, the reason why we went to Deuteronomy chapter 4 is because Yeshua said in Luke chapter 21:22, for these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. And we just read those things that was written in Deuteronomy chapter 4. And also, if you want to read it in full details, look at Leviticus chapter 26 and Deuteronomy 28, but mainly Leviticus. A lot of people talk about Deuteronomy 28, but Leviticus 26, Leviticus chapter 26 is also very, very important. Okay, so that's the reason why we went back. So in verse 23, Luke 21:23, Luke 21:23, but woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, for there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon these people. Wrath upon these people. Yah's anger. Whose wrath? Yah's anger upon these people. Who's the people? The Hebrews. That's when Yah will begin to fulfill his threat that he made. If you remember in Deuteronomy chapter 4, he said that he would kick them out of the land. And he talks about, so that's the wrath. Verse 24, and they will fall by the sword. They will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations. Isn't it what we read in Deuteronomy chapter 4? Deuteronomy chapter 4. That's exactly what we read from verse 25. So it says in Luke 21:24, Luke 21:24, and they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So he starts out in Luke 21 telling you, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by the armies, get out, flee, run into the wilderness. That was exactly where the Hebrews ran into in 70 AD. They tried to resist the Romans. They couldn't. They were besieged. Many was slaughtered. Many Hebrews were slaughtered. Exactly the way Yeshua told you it was going to happen with women who are nursing babies and stuff. So they did eventually fled into that mountain, into that wilderness. But it also says in verse 24, right? In verse 24 of Luke 21, Luke chapter 21:24, it says this, and they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led, because those Romans wasn't smiling. The Romans did not leave their land from the place known today as Europe. They didn't travel all the way from there to Jerusalem to go just like ask you to leave your land peacefully. No, they went with the sword. They slaughtered a lot of people in that 70 AD. They destroyed the whole city of Jerusalem, including the temple. That was when the temple was finally destroyed. That was when the temple that Solomon built was finally knocked to the ground. The whole city was burnt to the ground. That was when the Hebrews fled. Just like Yeshua told them to do. You either get out or die. And many of them was killed by the Romans. Verse 24, Luke 21:24, and they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Now, after the Hebrews was led into, after the Romans came into Jerusalem in 70 AD, in the year 70 AD, this was about 30-something years, about 37 years after Christ said these things. So as of the time of Christ, the Hebrews was just, they were safely in the land. The temple was standing. Their houses were standing. But the things that Yeshua was talking about in Luke 21 happened in 70 AD. 30-something years after he said these things, after he went back to heaven. That was when the Hebrews was completely for good driven out of their land. Just like Yah said that it will happen. Now, the Romans took over the land. The Romans took over the land of Jerusalem from that moment on. they were holding on to the land up until the time that he now went from their hand into the hands of their children. The British got hold of the land, and the British was controlling that land for a long time. And then in 1948, they now gave it into the hands of those that are holding on to it right now. It's called the British Mandate. If you go and study the British Mandate. So it was the British that now gave the land over into those people who are living on it right now. But don't forget what Yeshua said in Luke 21:24. Yeshua does tell you that the Gentiles will trample on the land until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. The times of the Gentiles have not been fulfilled yet. Not yet. Their times will be fulfilled. If you want to see more about this, read Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7. Especially Daniel chapter 2. You will see where it describes the times of the Gentiles. The times of the Gentiles will be fulfilled when Yeshua returns the second time. So right now the Gentiles are ruling the world. Their times will be fulfilled at the second coming of Christ, when Yah will establish the kingdom of Christ. That's when when Christ comes back, he will then destroy the kingdom of the Gentiles and establish his kingdom that will last, that he will reign over. So right now, the times of the Gentiles have not come to complete, have not been fulfilled. The Gentiles are still ruling the world. So, and Yeshua tells you that the Gentiles will trample on the land until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. But again, it's one thing for me to tell you that their times have not been fulfilled. I don't just want to tell you that. I'm telling you to read Daniel chapter 2. Read the whole chapter of Daniel chapter 2. When you read it, you will see when the times of the Gentiles will be fulfilled. The Bible clearly tells you in Daniel chapter 2, the times of the Gentiles will be fulfilled at the second coming of Christ. But until then, the Gentiles will continue to rule the world, and they are ruling the world right now. So until their time is fulfilled, it says in Luke 21:24 that the Gentiles will trample on that land. So we have a problem with those who are trampling on the land right now, because the Gentiles are not Hebrews. Gentiles are non-Hebrews. So if we have Yeshua telling us that the Gentiles will trample on the land until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled, and those who are in the land are claiming to be the Hebrews or the Jews, well, somebody is lying. No wonder they reject Yeshua, because they've seen the words of Yeshua, and the words of Yeshua contradicts what they are claiming. So if Yeshua says in Luke 21:24 that the Gentiles will trample on the land until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled, and we have people who are dwelling on the land that claims to be the Jews, somebody is lying, because a Gentile is a non-Jew, a non-Hebrews, a non-Israelite. So either they are lying and Yeshua is telling the truth, or Yeshua is lying and they are telling the truth. So it will begin to make sense to you why they reject the New Testament and reject Yeshua, because they know these things. So, but again, in order for you to get a full understanding, you may need to read Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7. Especially in Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7, that's when you're going to see when the times of the Gentiles will be fulfilled. Until then, they are ruling the world, and the land went from the Romans into the hands of the British, from the British into the current occupants of the land. Okay, so that's the Yah's anger. And within all this, Yah keeps quiet, because his threat must come to pass. He told the Israelites, if you don't keep my laws, these are things I'm going to do to you. I will scatter you in the four corners of the earth. Everything that he said he would do to them. For more information on that, Leviticus chapter 26. Leviticus chapter 26, like as I said, people love to quote Deuteronomy 28, but really, you should check out Leviticus 26. Very interesting. Leviticus 26 and then Deuteronomy chapter 28. That's where you see the full details of what Yah said will happen to his people. But you need to understand, as this is going on right now, the Most High is not saying anything. Just like you, if you've been threatening your child and he's been a wild, just messing up the house, destroying stuff, you're on the phone, you're doing something very important, he's making noise, just like he's not listening. He's being a nuisance. And you kept warning your son that you're going to send them into the room and you're going to lock the room and they will laugh at you and keep doing what they're doing. And at some point, you're going to get off that phone, you're going to take that child, you're going to drag them into that room, and you will lock that door so hard and you will not open that door. If you told them that they will be in there for 1 hour, you will close that door and they will be in there for 1 hour. You will do that because you kept warning them and they were not listening. The Israelites kept killing the prophets. They were not listening. So if you provoke your parents to that level, they will do exactly what they said they would do. Yah described his people as his children and he being their father. It's kind of like a little bit like that. So that's the reason why Yah is not speaking right now. He's quiet right now. He will resume, everything will resume back to normal when the times of the Gentiles are over. And at some point now, Yah will say, all right, enough is enough. And that's when he's going to gather his people back again. That's when he's going to basically destroy most of the Gentiles. Why? Because they refuse to keep the law. The Gentiles that do keep the law, he will protect them. He will save them. Because he says in Numbers chapter 15, Numbers chapter 15, verse 15 and verse 16, Numbers 15, 15 and 16. The book of Numbers, chapter 15, verse 15 and verse 16. Yah said that the same law he gave to the Israelite applies to the non-Israelite. And to the same culture, the same thing that he requires to the Israelite to do, he also requires the Gentiles to do. And he said that the Gentiles are the same. The same way he sees the Israelite, he said that they're all the same. The Gentiles and the Hebrew Israelite are the same in his face. Unfortunately, most Hebrew Israelites do not read that Numbers chapter 15, verse 15 and verse 16, because they've created a different doctrine. They have this doctrine that if you are Gentile, you're pretty much doomed. If you're a Gentile, then you are nothing but you're going to be a slave in the future, and that's it. Will the Gentiles serve the Israelites? The Bible does say that, but the law that Yah gave the Israelites applies to everyone. When the Israelites were described as the chosen, people like to talk about the chosen. There was a reason why the Israelite was chosen. There was a reason why they were chosen. And the Bible tells us, Yah tells us exactly the reason why he chose the Israelite. In Exodus chapter 19, verse 5 and verse 6, he said that he chose the Israelite to be a kingdom of priests. A kingdom of priests. What was the job of the priest? When Yah chose the Levite among the 12 tribes, the job of the priests among the 12 tribes of Israel, their job was to teach the rest of the tribes Yah's law. The job of the Levite was to teach Yah's law, to serve Yah by teaching the rest of the Israelites the law of Yah. You can see this more in Malachi chapter 2. You can see a detail, the description of the job of the priest. The people of the land is supposed to go to the priest to hear the law, to hear Yah's law. That is their job. So when Yah then chooses the Israelite from the rest of the nations, as he said in Exodus chapter 19, verse 5 and verse 6. When he chose the Israelite, he didn't just choose the Israelite just so they can be Israelite. No, they were chosen to teach the rest of the nations. That's the reason why in Hosea chapter 4, verse 6, he said that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you've rejected knowledge, I will also reject you from being a priest, seeing that you have forgotten the law of your God. So if the Israelite was chosen to teach the rest of the nations the law, but they stopped keeping the law themselves, they were no longer keeping the law, then reject them. That's the reason why you were chosen. You were chosen to teach the rest of the nations. And it really, it's so crazy when you see people that will turn away other nations. You see Gentiles walking up to the Hebrews, hearing the Hebrews preach, being convicted. They will walk up to a Hebrew man and say, "What do I do?" And then you watch the Hebrew say, "This is not for you. This is not." I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? Do you even know why you were chosen? You're supposed to be teaching those Gentiles, and they will hear you and they feel convicted and walk up to you, and you're telling them, you basically tell them, get away from here. This is not for you. You are a heathen. You are doomed. You are a Gentile. You're doomed. No, that's foolishness. That is absolutely misunderstanding of the reason why you were chosen. You were chosen to teach them. And that's why you see, eventually, Yah's will come to pass. Eventually. Like you see in Isaiah chapter 2. In Isaiah chapter 2, the nations will come and be taught in Jerusalem. You look at people of other nations, the Ethiopian eunuch, the Italian man, what's his name, in Acts chapter 10, the Cornelius. You see how Yah was sending the Hebrews to go teach other nations, the people of other nations. That is his will. So just because we're not doing it right now doesn't mean it's not going to happen in the future. So it's a very sad situation when you see Hebrews turn away Gentiles and say, this is not for you. You are a devil. You are doomed. Well, if that person wants to repent, who are you to turn them away? You're not supposed to do that. That's against Yah's law. That is against the law of Yah. If they're willing to repent and keep Yah's law, if you turn them away, that's a sin. You're not supposed to do that. As long as they're willing to keep the law. If they're not willing to keep the law, you shouldn't have anything to do with them. You should not have anything to do with them. You should stay the hell away from them. Even Hebrews that refuse to keep the law, you should stay away from them. But it's just totally against Yah's law to turn away a Gentile that wants to keep his law. You can't do that. You're supposed to teach them. And they become one in the sight of Yah if they're willing to keep the law. Now, are the Gentiles going to keep the law? Majority of them will not. Majority of the Gentiles will be destroyed. Only the humble Gentiles will be saved. Majority of the Gentiles, unfortunately, majority of them will not be saved. Because nobody that refuses to keep the law will be saved. Majority of them will be destroyed. And majority of that destruction will happen through what people call World War III. World War III. It's coming. The instruments are ready. The nuclear bombs are ready. The Americans have their own. The Russians have theirs. The North Koreans are trying to get theirs. The Iranians have theirs. The so-called Israel, they all have their nuclear bomb. What's going to happen right now is exactly what the Bible tells you. Isaiah 24. Isaiah chapter 24 verse 1 to 6. Isaiah chapter 24 verse 1 to 6. Malachi chapter 4 verse 1 to 6. These two places makes it very clear. So what's going to happen very soon, any moment from now, is that eventually Yah will say, okay, enough is enough. And you're going to be so surprised on what, like, you will think you're dreaming when Yah will rescue you to get you out. He's going to rescue his people, to get them out, to protect them, to put them in safety. Revelation chapter 3 verse 10. Yeshua says, because you have persevered to keep the command, I will deliver you from the great hour of trouble that will come upon the whole world. Because you have persevered to keep the command, I will keep you away from the great hour of trouble. So there's a day coming. Isaiah 24, 1-6. Malachi chapter 4, 1-6. Yah will protect those who have persevered. Persevered from what? Persevered from the mockery that people are mocking you right now. Persevered from the humiliation. Persevered from the hardship that you have to go through in order to keep the law. Persevered from everything you have to give up in order to keep the law. If you're willing to persevere all the way to the end, Yah will keep you away. And the instruments for this punishment is ready. Those nuclear bombs are ready. And they're going to be going off very soon. But Yah will protect those that keep the law, according to his word in the prophets. That's when he's going to be destroying most of the Gentiles. Most of them, because when those bombs begin to go off, these bombs are going to be wiping out countries. This is not like a regular war. Nothing like this has ever happened before. The Bible says that nothing like this has ever happened, and it will never happen. Like, it's going to be different. So in Isaiah chapter 24, verse 1-6, it says that by the time it's done, very few people will be left in this world. Very few. Because those nuclear bombs are going to be destroying nations. One country is going to be destroyed. There are people who are underground in the bunker will retaliate. Their friends and allies will begin to retaliate. It's going to be a madness in the world. Madness between the East and the West. Crazy madness. And you don't want to be around anywhere when this is going on, because you will look up and you will see a red smoke in the sky. What are you going to do? Like, where are you going to hide? That red smoke is death coming right in your face. And there's no way to hide from this. Some people are talking about, digging the ground so you can go underground and so you can survive, nuclear bomb shelter. That's ridiculous. You're wasting your money. The money you could use now to go somewhere and live a set apart life, you're using it to buy a bunker, and so you can be able to survive the nuclear destruction that is coming through World War III, which will be triggered any moment. All it takes is for North Korea to drop a bomb on America, or or just very little thing, or Iran to do it. Iran is very, 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 very important in Bible prophecy. The Iranians, because they are the Persians. If you know what has happened in the past, the Iranians are very important. There's the reason why Yah preserved them. The Iranians you see today are the descendant of the Persians. They are very important in Bible prophecy. And Yah have used them in the past. He will most likely use them again in the future, because Yah likes to repeat things. So these people will, like he says at the end of Revelation chapter 17, at the end of Revelation chapter 17, it says that Yah will put it in their heart to burn that woman with fire. So we are so close. But when this thing begins to happen, people will think, oh, it's just World War III. It's just a conflict. No, it's going to be a punishment from Yah. Just like if you were around at that time when the flood, when the water was coming from the ground and coming from the sky, I bet you if you had scientists around that time, they would try to explain what was happening. So when Yah, like I always tell you, Bible prophecy gets fulfilled undetected. Bible prophecy is fulfilled undetected, meaning that people who were living around that time, when Bible prophecy is being fulfilled, they wouldn't know. That's the reason why majority of the people that was around during the time of Christ did not believe that he was the Savior. They had the book of Isaiah chapter 53. They had the man within them. He was fulfilling the things in Isaiah 53. They still did not believe him. So when when this war breaks out, when Yah's punishment breaks out, people will not believe it. If you tell them that Yah is doing this, they won't believe you. Revelation chapter 18 and 2nd Esdras chapter 15 talks about America. And also Isaiah 47. Isaiah 47, Revelation 18, 2nd Ezra chapter 15. These three places talked about America. You want to read it to see for yourself. But when it begins to be fulfilled, if you tell someone that Yah is doing that, they wouldn't believe you. You saw in Isaiah chapter 42, Isaiah 42 from verse 22. It talks about what Yah was doing to the Hebrews. And Yah said that they did not know that he was doing those things to them. He was punishing them. He was doing stuff to them and they didn't even know. Isaiah chapter 42 from verse 22 all the way down. So when the Most High is doing something, most people in the world don't know. They wouldn't know. They will not know that Yah is doing that to them. You also see this in Revelation chapter 9 verse 20. Revelation chapter 9 verse 20, when this punishment begins, people will refuse to repent. Because if you come around them at that point and you say like, you know what? Hey, stop. Get a Bible. Start keeping the law in the Bible. God is doing this to you. They will think you're crazy. But the beautiful thing is that the Most High will protect his people that are keeping the law. If you persevere to the end. If you endure to the end, if you're willing to give up all these things and you're willing to do all these things, if you persevere and you keep on holding on, you keep on keeping the law, the Most High will not allow you to go through the punishment. So it was through those punishments that most of the heathens are going to be destroyed. And not me, but Isaiah 26 says that when he's done, by the time he's done burning the people, that burning, fire and burning, that's a nuclear burning. By the time it's done, very few people will be left. Another example of this, for those who need, if you need more information on this, 2nd Chronicles chapter 20. 2nd Chronicles chapter 20. So in 2nd Chronicles chapter 20, you see nations that decided to come against Israel. And the king of Israel at that time, he got scared. He was powerless. He ran to Yah. And he basically cried out to Yah and said that these nations are coming against us. They are powerful. I can't do anything. I can't defeat them. I can't. Please help us. And Yah intervened. So how did Yah intervene? This is what's going to happen in the future. So what Yah did is that Yah created problems between the nations that was coming against Israel. Yah made them to begin to fight each other. They had misunderstanding between themselves. These nations, the two nations, they had misunderstanding between themselves. And they began to fight each other. So the goal was to go fight against the Israelites and destroy them. And if they had gotten closer, they would have wiped out the Israelites. They were powerful, they had the equipment, they were ready, they were strong. Their goal was to go destroy the Israelites. But Yah made them to begin to fight within each other. By the time they were done fighting each other, they literally all killed themselves. These are hundreds and hundreds of men. It starts with a little minor issue that usually develop between two men. From there, they become tribal and begin to fight each other. According to the Bible, by the time they finish fighting each other, they all killed each other. So all the way to the last two men that will stab each other because they fight with swords. They were fighting with sword. So all the way to the last man. So if we are the two last men standing, you stab me, I stab you, eventually we will both collapse from the wound. That's how these nations destroyed each other. They self-destruct. This is what the Most High will do. He will cause two nations to begin to fight each other. So he has done it in the past. He's going to do it again. he tells you at the end of Revelation chapter 17 that he will put it in the hearts of those that will burn that woman with fire. The woman is a nation. Wait, how are they going to burn her with fire? Go and study nuclear destruction. It's fire. Nuclear destruction is nothing but fire that burns. But the heat is so high that it melts things. It melts people. It doesn't just burn. That's why it talks about a nation being burned down in 1 hour. The only thing that can destroy a nation in 1 hour is the nuclear destruction. And it says that when that happens, nobody will dwell there again. That's what nuclear bomb does. When it goes off and when it's done, you cannot go back in there again. So for those who are talking about going to get bomb shelter and go underground, that's foolishness, because you can't come out. If you come out from the ground, you will die from the radiation. Because when the nuclear bomb goes off, you cannot go around there anymore. If you go there and you breathe it in, you get contaminated by the radiation, which will eventually kill you. So I do hear some Hebrews that talk about, that the best thing is to keep the law. Be faithful to the law of Yah. He will protect you. He will guide you. And you will be, that's one of the most wonderful and one of the most amazing thing you will ever experience, to watch that deliverance, to watch being taken away, to watch yourself being taken away, and you will not understand what's happening to you. Yah will gather together and protect those that are humble and are faithful and are persevering to keep his laws right now. So again, at the end of the day, you still see that punishment between those that are keeping the law and those that don't. Yah will punish. Right now, he is punishing his people right now. And if you know about his people, they're going through the punishment they're going through the curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28. And their enemies are ruling over them right now. Their enemies are at the top, his people are at the bottom. But eventually, that will come to a close and the table will be turned around. So anybody who is smart, whether you are a Hebrew or a Gentile, your only solution is the law, to keep the law. Because at the end of the day, that's really what counts. That's the only reason why you're going to be allowed into the kingdom, whether you kept the law. It's not going to be because of the color of your skin, or whether you were a Hebrew, or whether, it doesn't matter. At the end, at the very last minute, what matters is how you kept the law. That's what matters. And anybody who is smart should be keeping that law right now. You don't want to take that chance. That pork is not worth it. That nice looking house is not worth it. That car is not worth it. That woman, it's not worth it. That man is not worth it. That sexual pleasure, it's not worth it. These things are temporary. These things, none of them, even the human beings, none of them. There was one sister that found out, there was someone found out about marriage and then shared with her, and eventually she said something about not wanting to be by herself for the rest of her life. So she went ahead to be with a man that is not her husband, and she got pregnant. And her reason was that she doesn't want to be by herself for the rest of her life. Well, who told you that man will not leave you? Who told? None of these things is worth it. I know it's easier said than done. I know it's easier to say and is much more difficult to actually put into practice. But I would rather, these things are not worth it, because I've seen people get to the highest of their life, and it was almost like it was yesterday. They were at the top. They had everything. Before you know it, they are gone. They are gone. They are dead. And they will leave behind all of those materialism. So these things are not really worth it. It's not what, if you have to disobey Yah's law to get anything, to get anyone, to be with anyone, to have anything, it's not worth it. And we have to really work hard, because for those of us that do keep keep the law. Yah is going to punish us differently and severely. And let's close with Hebrews chapter 10 verse 26 to 31, because we're looking at punishment from Yah and forgiveness from Yah, from Yah's perspective. His people, as in general, as a whole, are living under his punishment right now, worldwide, anywhere they are. Anywhere they are, you go to Mexico, you go to Iraq, you go to Haiti, anywhere they are, and like it says in Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 4, they will discontinue from their heritage. When you get discontinued from your heritage, it means that you will no longer know who you are. Oh, by the way, about those who are in Jerusalem right now, it says in Ezekiel chapter 7:24. Ezekiel 7:24. Brother Wayland, could you please mute yourself? Ezekiel 7:24, about those who are in the land, the Gentiles who are in the land. Yah said in Ezekiel 7:24, he was talking to the, okay, so I was talking about the threats. Yah kept making threats. So he was sending his prophet and messengers to tell the Israelites, if you don't keep my laws, here are the things I'm going to do to you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to scatter the rest of you in the four corners of the earth. I'm going to do this to you. I'm going to do that to you. One of the people that Yah used to warn his people was Ezekiel. One of the men that Yah used to give those threats and warning to his people to keep the law was Ezekiel. And Ezekiel chapter 7 verse 24, Yah said that he will send the worst of the Gentiles. The worst of the Gentiles. Not just the regular Gentiles. There are different types of Gentiles. The Chinese, the Japanese, the Indians. These are all Gentiles. The Mexicans, the Cubans, the Malaysians. These are all Gentiles. But Yah said that he will send the worst of the Gentiles. And notice it also said that they will dwell in your houses. I will send the worst of the Gentiles against you, not to come and pet you in the back. I will send the worst of the Gentiles against you, and they will dwell in your homes or in your houses. They're not going to be dwelling in your houses while you're there, because they're there to kill you. That's why Yeshua said, run. So after you get kicked out of the land, they will dwell in your houses. That's what that means. That's in Ezekiel chapter 7:24. So, you also see something similar in Deuteronomy chapter 32. Yah talked about how he's going to, because you have provoked me to jealousy by worshiping those things that are not God, I will provoke you to jealousy by choosing people who are not a nation, a foolish nation. I will choose them. So they are temporarily choosing right now. If you look at them very well, you see that there are some things that are very fishy about them, like holding the Talmud over the Torah and things like that, like wearing their tassel only white color and not having a ribbon of blue and little things like that. So Yah did choose them to provoke you to jealousy. Deuteronomy chapter 32, he said that he will do that. So these are all the punishment that Yah did mention that his people will go through. And while it's happening, he's quiet. He's not going to say anything right now. Also, another place you want to also read is Malachi chapter 3 from verse 14. Malachi chapter 3 from verse 14 all the way down. So while all this is going on, Yah is quiet. He's just watching to see what you will do, what I will do, the choice that we will make. We have the choice to break the law or to keep the law. Yah is watching us to see what we will choose as a people. Those who are smart will choose to keep the law. So as those who are trying to keep the commandment, there's a verse for us in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 26 to verse 31. We'll read that in closing. Hebrews chapter 10, 26 to 31. Hebrews 10, 26 to to 31. Hebrews. Okay, so in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 26 to 31, again, the word there, sin, is lawlessness. So Yah says, for if we sin, or if we break the law, if we sin willfully, after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins or for lawlessness. Verse 27, but a certain fearful expectation of judgment and fury indignation, which will devour the adversaries. Verse 28, anyone who has rejected the law of Moshe died without mercy on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Verse 29, of how much worse punishment do you suppose will be thought worthy who has trampled the son of Elohim underfoot, counted the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified a common thing, and insulted the Spirit of grace. This is exactly what those that claim to be Christians are doing. They are insulting the Spirit of grace. The Spirit of grace. I don't want to go into, so we can close. I don't want to go into it, but this is an insult to grace. Like when Paul says, are we going to continue breaking the law that grace may abound? He said, God forbid, Yah forbid that we'll continue breaking Yah's law so we can get more grace. That is a complete, absolutely misunderstanding of grace. Grace was that we were eating pork and breaking the Sabbath and doing all these things. And we were able to, we get an opportunity to repent, to know the truth. I mean, so for those of us that are trying to keep the law, now that we know the knowledge of the truth, and we know these things, if we backslide, wow. If we backslide, Yah will punish us even more than those that don't even know the truth, because we have no reason. But of course, oftentimes we try to make up reason why we backslide. That is why I always plead with people. Please, please, please. I don't care where you are. Anywhere you are, keep the Sabbath. I have a brother that used to join us over here. He doesn't join us anymore, but he still communicates with me. He has some situation that he's trying to rectify right now. He has a law that he's trying to keep, that he's struggling with. It has to do with marriage. He still sends me messages. He still needs help, and he still communicates with me. If you don't have to join here. Wherever you are, keep the Sabbath. That's all I care. Wherever you are, keep the Sabbath. Whatever you do, please do not stop keeping the law. Do not stop. Keep on keeping the law anywhere you are. Do whatever you can. The more you get this understanding, the more Yah will require from you. Wherever you are, keep the law. And the Sabbath is number one. The Sabbath is number one among all the commandments. Why? Because in Exodus chapter 31, verse 12 to verse 18, Exodus 31, 12 to 18, the Most High said that the Sabbath is a sign that identifies those that belongs to Him. And we are to observe that Sabbath forever. It's an everlasting covenant. So the Sabbath is the main thing that links you to the Most High. The Sabbath is the mark of the Most High God. So wherever you are, please do not stop keeping the Sabbath. Do not stop keeping the law. Anywhere you are, anywhere you go, do whatever you can to keep the law and the Sabbath. This is very important. So I hope that we now understand if you are terrible like we all used to be, it doesn't matter what you've done in the past. If you are willing to stop and you're willing to start keeping Yah's law with all your heart and with all your soul, all his laws, he will forget about the things you did in the past. That's what he said, and that's what we saw today in Ezekiel chapter 18. Also Ezekiel chapter 33. We didn't get to go to that. Ezekiel 18 and Ezekiel 33, Yah was saying the same thing. So it doesn't matter what you've done in the past, he will forgive everything if you are willing to keep his laws. But if you're keeping the law and then you all of a sudden you stop, you go back to the old ways, it's like a dog going back to its vomit. Yah will be more angry at you at that point if you backslide and go back. If I'm keeping the law, all of a sudden I stop. Usually people don't stop immediately. They slowly stop. If it's a man, typically at some point he's wearing tassel all the time, and then all of a sudden, once in a while, maybe he buy this shirt and then he wouldn't bother to put a tassel on it, and then once in a while he would put that shirt on without a tassel, and then he will go out without a tassel, and then the next day he wears a tassel. Then sometimes he will wear a tassel, sometimes he won't. That's usually how people fall out of faith. That's usually how it happens. And then slowly, before you know it, he begins to trim his beard, and then from trimming it to shaving it all the way down, and before you realize that he will have like a goatee, and then from there he will have nothing. So it happens slowly. Same thing with Sabbath. It usually starts little by little. You from keeping the Sabbath, now you decide, okay, I'm gonna go to this place on the Sabbath. I'm not gonna buy anything. I'll just go there, but I won't buy anything. And then you go, and then you won't buy anything, and then you come back, and then before you know it, another Sabbath, somebody will call you and ask you if you can do this on this day, and you look and you see it's a Sabbath, and you don't say anything, and you do it slowly. Most people don't fall out immediately. It's slowly, little by little. Once in a while, like you have your hair open, and then you're trying to go to the store, right? Or you're trying to go outside to take out trash. You're like, I'm just taking out trash, and you run outside without having your hair covered, and then the next day you cover your hair all day. And then the day after that, you want to go to the store, and like, what? Let me just go. And then you go to the store without your hair. It all happens slowly. And every single one of this falling away, you will have a reasonable justification. That's the bad thing about this. We always have a reasonable, I say reasonable to us. When people are going against the law of Yah, they always have a justification to justify why they're doing what they're doing. It's so dangerous and it's so bad. So we have to be very careful not to do this. We have to be very, very careful, because I'm telling you, I do watch what's going on in the world politics. We are so close. You see, when the punishment of Yah will begin any moment from now, there will not be any warning. There will not be a warning. It's going to start like immediately. But if you are not worthy, then you will be caught off guard. And your mouth will be open along with the mouth of the Gentiles, wondering what's going on. Your eyes glued on your TV. But the righteous have been protected, taken away protected, so they don't have to go through those punishment. I can't help but I have to read Luke chapter 21, because Yeshua mentioned this in Luke chapter 21. I'm sorry, I said Hebrew was, let's read that and close. But as I was saying this, Luke chapter 21 came along, and Yeshua talked about this. He warned us in Luke chapter 21 from verse 34. Luke 21 from verse 34. Yeshua said this: But take heed to yourselves, lest your heart be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and cares of this life, and that day come on you unexpectedly. And that day come on you unexpectedly. Verse 35, Luke 21:35. For it will come as a snare on all those who dwell on the face of the whole earth. Verse 36, watch therefore and pray always that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. As soon as Yah says, all right, enough, Yeshua will send out his angels. They will gather those that are keeping the law. And once you are part of those first people, that's it. You have nothing to worry about anymore. You have nothing to worry about. You don't have to worry about the judgment day. You don't have to. If you are worthy enough, if I am worthy enough to be among those that Yah will protect so that he can punish those that went against his laws, then that's it. You will be among, that's it. You don't have to worry about the judgment day anymore. You don't, because you are already worthy. Yah will still judge you though. He will still judge us based on everything that we did. But you have repented enough, like you've gotten rid of the lawlessness like he told us to do at the end of Ezekiel. You've gotten a new heart by keeping the law, a new spirit and a new heart. So you are good. He is going to keep his word in Ezekiel chapter 18 by not remembering all the lawlessness. So will there be calculation on the judgment day? Of course, the books will be opened up. We will be judged based on what we do. But because we quit those, but this is the time to quit the lawlessness. This is the time to do all that. As soon as that day comes unexpectedly, everything is ready. So as I was saying, I'm looking at the world, looking at America, looking at Europe, looking at the Middle East, looking at the things that Yah said and how these things will come to pass. We are so close. We are so close. We are really, 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 really close. When it will start, it will catch people off guard. So there will not be a warning, like a day or two warning that you can get some chance and say, let me repent right now. Okay, let me repent. No, this is the time to get our acts together. And anything on our way, anything that gets in the way of us keeping the law, we have to separate from that thing. A job, a person, who doesn't, anything. This is the time. So all praises to our Heavenly Father for today's Sabbath and for everything. I thank you for everything. I pray that He will find us worthy, that He will find us worthy to be among those that will stand on that day and will be counted worthy to be protected and eventually to be able to stand on the right side and not on the left hand side.